continue to discuss and work on. Currently, we're happy with where we've landed with Void Eruption competing with Dark Ascension, so there's not too many cooldown spells. Well, yeah, being able to select both of them would have been weird. But even now, though, like, I would love to hear from Shadow Priest later when you would take either. How many classes in the game have a choice node near the top of their tree to pick between 2 2-minute cooldowns? Is one of them, like, kind of always just going to be better than the other one? Is there one that's better in a certain situation? Like, it seems like the identity for both of them maybe isn't fully realized with the tree, so I don't know. We'll wait to hear from them, but it just definitely... I think people are excited to see that Dark Ascension added and stuff like that, and especially that it doesn't, like, consume the Dark Evangelism stacks or whatever. Just, I don't think it's done yet, that's all, and we will definitely check with them on that. So there's not too many cooldown spells. With that said, Dark Ascension is visually exciting, wow, but we feel it's currently lacking in identity. Oh, I said that. We're discussing changes like Dark Ascension being more rotationally transformative while active or having different cooldowns than Void Eruption, so that its use cases over Void Eruption are more clear. We don't have plans to make major changes to either spell for Dragonflight launch. Oh, this is why they're mad. But this will be a radar for our future, or the first reason. Maybe I'll let them speak on this, but that you should definitely be looking to make major changes to this. It seems like they're halfway in between doing what they did with, like, Single-Minded Fury, where they were just like, oh, or Destrolocks. Oh, Destrolocks, you guys don't want to play with Havocs too hard? Okay, Mayhem exists. It's not going to be better, but it's going to be there, and we'll put it near the top of the tree. Single-Minded Fury, same thing with Warriors. Oh, we have, like, this halfway down the tree thing. Yeah, we're going to ruin, like, the entire left side of your tree because it's for a build that is not supposed to be optimal and is not as good. But, like, you know it's there and it's, like, an option. And then it seems like with Shadow Priest, they're like, okay, we get it. Void Eruption's a huge problem, but well, it seems like they're in between the philosophy of replacing it with something that's better. They already made it a 2-minute cooldown, which is less acid PI. But making it a choice node with another 2-minute... It seems like this class is in need, to me, of one of those things being majorly different from the other when they both just seem like 2-minute cooldowns that kind of do the same thing. Also, I don't even know what Dark Ascension's rotation looks like at the moment. I know they'd made Mind Spike not remove dots anymore, but kind of interested to see where that goes. Anyways, we'll have a talk with Shadow Priest about this in a couple minutes. I'm just going to move on. Like, most good choice nodes, I'll point out a few good choice nodes in the game, just as an example. True Shot. You get True Shot, you get Eagle Talons, True Focus, and then there is a node where you pick between having a Giga 2-minute True Shot or having a shorter cooldown True Shot based on your stats. This is fucking sick. This is, like, one of the best CD choice nodes in the entire game. This gives them so much range. Like, there could be realistic scenarios where it's not just pick the one that does more damage based on fights, like, actually. Now, I don't know about the current tuning of the tree. It's very possible that this is where, like, a Hunter main, like, runs the numbers, even though they haven't even started tuning spells yet, and they've only worked on design on tree, and they're like, well, right now you don't even take it, so doesn't matter. Relax. Like, clearly, I think clearly with tuning, like, you're going to take this True Shot line every time, and you should. Know that, like, that is, in my opinion, a good design for a choice node, and other classes should look to emulate that. Mind Spike and Mind Flay coexisting is something we're going to try to be wary of. Definitely, because Mind Flay is like single target filler, but now that you made Mind Spike not take off your dots and also be something that I think can proc, there's some talent here where, like, Mind Spikes proc, like, faster or instant Mind Blast or something, but maybe that also works with Mind Flay. So now if it doesn't remove dots, it's kind of just like which one does more damage. Shadow is like single target filler. Dark Ascension is visually exciting, wow, but we feel it's currently lacking in identity. Oh, I said that. We're discussing changes like Dark Ascension being more rotationally transformative while active or having different cooldowns than Void Eruption, so that its use cases over Void Eruption are more clear. We don't have plans to make major changes to either spell for Dragonflight launch. Doing what they did with, like, Single-Minded Fury, where they were just like, oh, or Destrolocks. Oh, Destrolocks, you guys don't want to play with Havocs too hard? Okay, Mayhem exists. Being majorly different from the other when they both just seem like 2-minute cooldowns that kind of do the same thing. Also, I don't even know what Dark Ascension's rotation looks like at the moment. I know they'd made Mind... Shadow has so many spells to press rotationally, and this isn't helping that. At the same time, being able to build your own Shadow Priest was a goal this iteration. We want to believe this tree allows for that. Do you know what this feels like, in a way? This kind of feels like Vengeance Demon Hunters selecting Spirit Bomb back in Legion, but also having Soul Cleave. Like, you have two buttons that do the same thing, and one of them's a buff version of it, but it doesn't replace it. It's just going to be like, which one's better? It's not going to be a build your own priest. You're not going to see a priest that's like, all right, we're both, like, doing the exact same damage, but I'm a Mind Spaker and I'm a Mind Flay, because I identify with channeling. I don't know. Seems strange. Yeah, if they're going to try to be wary of it, that's good, because it seems like one of these things is kind of lost in the sauce Because they also made, like, think about how fucked this is. Because they also made Mind Seer, which I think this is actually a good change, is like an AoE spender that spends insanity per tick, and it also extends your dots and shit. It's like pretty sick. But then like Mind Flay is like this weird thing that's replaced by Mind Spike, and like, why do you have it? Okay, either way, moving on. Silence. We understand that Holy and Disc are the 2 specs without access to an interrupt in the entire game. Yep, this is a problem, and I think this is going to be about PvP. I've just assumed from the beginning that the reason they didn't do this is because of PvP and Priest's current strength. But I don't think you can go off of current strength or even historical strength. You know what's a good example of this? Vengeance Demon Hunters have Darkness now, and it's a good change. And in all through Legion, Vengeance Demon Hunters really wanted Darkness, just like Havoc did, for all the right reasons. And then Vengeance Demon Hunters kept that same argument in the beginning of this expansion, 9.0, and Vengeance was like the best tank. But because they were the best tank, people were like, no, giving them Darkness, what? How could it be? And it's just because they were so good. Now, Priest and RMP is always good, and Priest is always good in PvP. So maybe that's why they just have too many tools and they can't have more. And I don't necessarily think that every class in the game needs to have everything necessarily. I think like the amount of classes that had kicks or didn't have kicks, this expansion was fine. But as soon as it's kind of like the issue with good and bad class trees and good pathing. It's weird for classes to, again, I can use Vengeance Demon Hunter as an example, that want to complain about having a really boring and shit spec tree, but it's like, and then someone's gonna be like, but look at the power you're getting. And they're right. Look at the power you're getting. You're getting Chaos Nova and Blur and Darkness and the Hunt. You're just getting like fucking buttons on buttons, but it's not interesting and the rest of your tree sucks, but it's still something that needs to be talked about, right? You don't want to be the only class in the game that doesn't have a kick when literally every other class in the game has a kick unless it's made up for it. But currently they're so powerful that it's hard to think about that. Priests are just going to feel bad if they don't have a kick. But let's hear their reasoning. We also realize Shadow has silence in their tree, which adds to the number of non-throughput nodes in their tree. This is also an issue with that. With that said, we are not adding silence to the priest class tree. Now, we'll get into the reasoning in a second, but I love that they're doing this instead of just not addressing it for the rest of the patch. Because like now, if people super hate this, maybe they'll reconsider it. Who knows? But at least you know where they stand, and hopefully they give a good reason, or a reason at all, good or not, as to why. There's so many questions. You could inspect element and replace silence and have blue text under it, and I would read that with my full attention for like 150 abilities in this game on why or why not they are doing something that people want or think about. Having access to an interrupt is not something we view as necessary for all specs. Again, last expansion made way more sense when it wasn't just these 2 specs out of 38 that don't have it. Same issue with like the raid buff situation in PvP at the moment. Yeah, every class doesn't need to have a raid buff, I agree. But when it's every single class, but like basically 1 or 2, that's a glaring problem. In PvP, Holy and Disc already provide valuable control to their team, and additionally having silence would provide more control than we're comfortable with. So basically, yeah, we think silence is too good in PvP. They're already good enough. This is especially true with how much control is becoming available across all classes in Dragonflight. This, and a thing we're going to get into later, is one of the first actual situations, and people have brought it up a lot, and then PvPers have told me that it's not really true, where there appears to be a node on a tree that seems PvP oriented, and that's the reason it exists, and then I'm just like, oh, well, that's a terrible PvE talent, but you know, gotta make the PvPers happy, and I'm sure they feel the same way about a lot of stuff. But in reality, a lot of things that work in PvE and PvP like work together, like 90x%, like high percent of abilities, very, very high percent, are things that make sense in both game modes. This is actually one of the most glaring things where it's like trying to make the priest tree for PvP and PvE just makes no sense, because it is absolutely absurd in PvE to say that priests cannot have kick in a PvE encounter or in dungeons, but every other healer can. Like, this doesn't make sense. But like PvP, specifically this class, and just because of PvP can't have a kick, that's a huge... I hope they find some way to resolve this by separating it. But then once you open that can of worms, you have to do it for a lot of different... I don't know. It's just not good. I think this is... I mean, is this what people are the most upset about? Because I would understand that. Because it's not like this whole thing where in PvP, these things are too good and we can't give them it because of PvP. That's something that people perceive... I'm sure there's more. But that's something that people perceive as something that's happening to every class, but it's actually not. There's not a lot of scenarios across all the classes in the game where people are getting fucked because how they are in PvE or PvP is too good. It's just kind of not happening, and it's only happening to Priest. All right, moving on. Vault of the Heavens. What the fuck does this mean? Is this reverse life grip? Dude, reverse life grip is fucking insane. They should add that for sure. This was discussed early on with this iteration with the intent to add it as a choice note against leap of faith. Yep. Inspect element, delete the rest of the paragraph, and just write, we are going to do this. Upon further consideration, Vault of the Heavens is almost always more useful than leap of faith, but it's actually not. There's not a lot of scenarios across all the classes in the game where people are getting fucked because how they are in PvE or PvP is too good. That's just kind of not happening, and it's only happening to Priest. All right, moving on. Vault of the Heavens. What the fuck does this mean? Is this reverse life grip? Dude, reverse life grip is fucking insane. They should add that for sure. This was discussed early on with this iteration with the intent to add it as a choice note against leap of faith. Yep. Inspect element, delete the rest of the paragraph, and just write, we are going to do this. Upon further consideration, Vault of the Heavens is almost always more useful than leap of faith. That is true. But leap of faith is one of the more fun interactions in WoW. Oh god. It changes your perspective on the battlefield. It's getting worse. You're always ready to react to save someone. And of course, it has some clever uses to get your friends killed. If we allow for the choice is clear. It actually isn't. You would take Vault of the Heavens most of the time. But there are absolutely scenarios where you would play Leap of Faith because you used to be able to make this choice back in the day, right? I remember, I don't know if it was a glyph or whatever, but I remember playing with priests in certain expansions where they had them on different fights. The choice is clear, or we'd have to nerf Vault of the Heavens down to something that won't feel really powerful. Yeah, but there's just some fights where Vault of the Heavens is sick. Also, priests have the do they have the worst movement in the game? It's way up there. Like paladins and priests, anyone who says DKs have bad movement, in PvE, or I don't agree with that. But like priest has bad movement, so why? It would be such a good class to give this something to. And if you have to nerf it to where it's like a longer cooldown, so it's like a 3-minute cooldown, I feel like that would still be an interesting choice. Like, yeah, whatever. The fantasy of the priest leaping to their target doesn't match our expectations for a priest either, so we instead separated body and soul from angelic feather for a little extra movement support and kept Leaf of Faith as standalone. Angelic feather and body and soul, if you have the points to actually get both, is nice. But interesting to hear what priests say. I imagine they're going to agree with me. But I hate this entire paragraph. I hate the reasoning. I hate them not doing it. The fact that they're moving off of it because it's potentially too powerful. You can change that in so many different ways. You can increase the cooldown. You can make it have less range. You could do plenty of things. And the fact that you'd play it more than other things on the class with maybe the worst movement in the game because their movement would get better or it would be picked more is fucking wild. And you still have the option to have all of these things. Really, really don't like this paragraph. Dude, just the way this was written too. Shining Force. This spell was deliberately removed in Dragonflight. Powerful spells being removed can cause frustration. However, the amount of control available across all classes in Dragonflight is causing concern. So you're basically saying, it's something we want to do for the whole game, guys, but priests are just like, well, but it's happening to us. On top of this, the prevalence of knockbacks is already increasing in Dragonflight PvP, and knockbacks can be the most influential control effect on arena or battleground maps with verticality. Question for, I'm not going to give a PvP, maybe in PvP this is really dog shit, I don't know, but quick question. Is High Explosive Trap now from Hunters the only remaining Shining Force-like ability in the game where you can knock something back at a distance that you yourself are not moving your character to? Like Thunderstorm and Blast Wave? You guys are mentioning Ring. Ring and Shining Force and High Explosive Trap are not even remotely comparable. They're two very different abilities. Nothing is really like Ring. Okay, yeah, so correct. In PvE, the only thing that you used to be able to Shining Force, the only thing that will serve in its position is now High Explosive Trap. Hunter stonks. Shining Force is so fucking good in PvE. It's actually insane. Spectral Guys. We've read feedback about a desire for the return of Spectral Guys. We discussed the ability early on and Body and Soul, if you have the points to actually get both, is nice. But interesting to hear what priests say. I imagine they're going to agree with me. But I hate this entire paragraph. I hate the reasoning. I hate them not doing it. The fact that they're moving off of it because it's potentially too powerful. You can change that in so many different ways. You can increase the cooldown. You can make it have less range. You could do plenty of things. And the fact that you'd play it more than other things on the class with maybe the worst movement in the game because their movement would get better or it would be picked more is fucking wild. And you still have the option to have all of these things. Really, really don't like this paragraph. Dude, just the way this was written too. Shining Force. This spell was deliberately removed in Dragonflight. Powerful spells being removed can cause frustration. However, the amount of control available across all classes in Dragonflight is causing concern. So you're basically saying, it's something we want to do for the whole game, guys. But priests are just like, well, but it's happening to us. On top of this, the prevalence of knockbacks is already increasing in Dragonflight PvP, and knockbacks can be the most influential control effect on arena or battleground maps with verticality. Question for... I'm not going to give a PvP. Being removed can cause frustration. However, the amount of control available across all classes in Dragonflight is causing concern. So you're basically saying, it's something we want to do for the whole game, guys. But priests are just like, well, but it's happening to us. On top of this, the prevalence of knockbacks is already increasing in Dragonflight PvP, and knockbacks can be the most influential control effect on arena or battleground maps with verticality. Question for... I'm not going to give a PvP... Maybe in PvP this is really dog shit, I don't know. But quick question. Is High Explosive Trap now from Hunters the only remaining Shining Force-like ability in the game where you could knock something back at a distance that you yourself are not moving your character to? Like Thunderstorm and Blast Wave? You guys are mentioning Ring. Ring and Shining Force and High Explosive Trap are not even remotely comparable. They're two very different abilities. Nothing is really like Ring. Okay, yeah, so correct. In PvE, the only thing that you used to be able to Shining Force, the only thing that will serve in its position is now High Explosive Trap. Hunter stonks. Shining Force is so fucking good in PvE. It's actually insane. Spectral Guys. We've read feedback about a desire for the return of Spectral Guys. We discussed the ability early on and decided against it, and our stance has not changed. We do not want Priest entering stealth, especially in PvP, as it removes the Priest from the target and the focus frame and occurs frequently. Hunters, Rogue, and Mages already do this often enough. I don't care about this at all. Moving on. Maybe someone does. Mind Bomb. In its current form as a disorient, we don't think it's very compelling as a replacement to Psychic Scream, besides preventing movement during the effect. What we anticipate is desired is the AoE stun version of this spell, but we are not planning to bring that forward. We pulled back on the AoE stun duration and availability some time ago and decided against adding this one back so that we wouldn't find ourselves in the same situation we were in the past. If everyone has an AoE stun, then it's not going to feel special to have one in the first place. So part of that's true. Like, if every class in the game just has a stun, then that's dog shit, but that's not really the case. How many classes have an AoE stun? Warlock, Monk, technically Paladin with Wake of Ashes, but we'll just ignore that. Demon Hunter, Shaman, Warrior, Shockwave, but I mean, you might as well not even type this because absolutely no one will select that in the capstone row in PvE. Actually, I'm just going to leave Warrior off for now. If you're talking about AoE stuns, there's absolutely no fucking shot that you will select this, and if you do, you're gonna just re-roll, because why the fuck are you giving up a major offensive cooldown for a stun? What a terrible, terrible node. Moving on. So what is it besides these four? Torrens? Yeah. Oh, Hunter. Yeah, Hunter has Binding Shot now. Damn. Hunters get High Explosive Shot, and they're removing Shining Force? They're not making Mind Bomb a stun because there's too many stuns in the game. Conveniently, Hunter gets a stun added. Hunters are low-key stealing from Priest, chat. Hunters got way more defensive tools, and Priests got their fucking Fade nerfed. I know they rebuffed it, but I'm just trying to start shit. I'm trying to be an instigator. So there's 12 classes in this game, and 5 of them have an AoE stun. Am I missing something? Evoker has an AoE stun? What button AoE stuns for Evoker? Deep Breath? No. Yeah, okay, sure, but yeah, and guys, stop saying tail swipe. It's not a stun. I understand it's a stop. Stop is not a stun. All right, okay, so it's these classes. So roughly half the... Okay, so they're definitely... A big thing in Blizzard's mind right now is they're thinking big time looking at all the classes in the game and trying to make... And using the point that not every class needs to have something, but they're kind of missing it in multiple areas. Like, saying not every class needs to have something, especially that you've already had, when only six classes have it, feels weird. It's also a totally different argument than the same one you made 3 times here, where they're saying we don't want to give you something because so many people have it, but it's like the only class in the game that doesn't have it, which we're about to get into with personal defenses. Healer Priest are the only class that a kick in the game, and Shadow Priests have to spend a point in their class tree to obtain their kick. I believe maybe one of the only classes in the game that has to do that. Is it the only? In their spec tree? Not class tree, spec tree. And they're also, by far, in PvE, the weakest class defensively now. It's not close. Moonkin? Oh, does Moonkin have to take Solar Beam in their spec tree? Oh, you're probably right. I bet they do. But their spec tree is getting like giga moved around. But that's also like very different. Like, I would not put Solar Beam on the same level as Silence, because like Solar Beam can do things that like no other thing in the game can do. It's extremely unique, and it's only unique to the spec, and it always has been. It like would not make sense for Solar Beam to be available for everyone else. This is also like very different. Select this, and if you do, you're gonna just re-roll, because why the fuck are you giving up a major offensive cooldown for a stun? What a terrible node. Moving on. So what is it besides these 4? Torrens? Yeah. Oh, Hunter. Yeah, Hunter has binding shot now. Damn, Hunters get high explosive shot and they're removing Shining Force. They're not making Mind Bomb a stun because there's too many stuns in the game. Conveniently, Hunter gets a stun at it. Hunters are low-key stealing from Priest, chat. Hunters got way more defensive tools, and Priest got their fucking Fade nerfed. I know they rebuffed it, but I'm just trying to start shit. I'm trying to be an instigator. So there's a stun. We don't want to give you something. Like, saying not every class needs to have something, especially that you've already had, when only 6 classes have it, feels weird. It's also a totally different argument than the same one you made 3 times here, where they're saying we don't want to give you something because so many people have it, but it's like the only class in the game that doesn't have it, which we're about to get into with personal defenses. Healer Priests are the only class that a kick in the game, and Shadow Priests have to spend a point in their class tree to obtain their kick. I believe maybe one of the only classes in the game that has to do that. Is it the only? In my opinion, it's very different. And it's also put in a point on purpose, although they are moving the tree around, to where, like, no matter what you select, like, you're going through it. And a lot of times, and this is fine in the trees, where they see something as core and fundamental to your class that they force you to go through it. Same thing with Windwalker after they made the change where, you know, now they're 100% requiring you to go through and get Flying Serpent Kick. And this is much better, because before when Flying Serpent Kick was here, you weren't getting it, and it makes sense that you have it, and they can't really make a baseline without making it available for all 3 specs. So this is just this is Blizzard's way to solve that. If they want you to have things that are baseline to your spec, that they do not want to happen to your whole class, they put them in your class tree, but they make you have to get them. And that's fine. That's how I would look at the other thing. But that's kind of not the case with Priest. Like, Priest does a good job of making it available for you to skip Silence, which is always great. I think it's really cool whenever you do have the point to actually select your kick in your spec tree or in your class tree or whatever, that you have the option to get more powerful things in scenarios where you don't need it. Specifically raiding, you don't need kicks a lot. So you can make your character more powerful. So I do like that they did that, but again, still kind of weird. Moving on. Personal defenses. For similar reasons as Silence, we will not be adding Dispersion to the Priest class tree. Yeah, the Silence reasons were not good. Let's see if they elaborate. Healing Priests are understandably on the weaker side of the defensive spectrum. They're not on the weaker side. They are the singular weakest defensive class in the game. Last expansion, classes that would just be most likely to die to just raid damage. Everyone has the same ability to use defensives and health stones and everything. The classes that would die the most when shit hits the fan, not when you're planning for it, when you're just taking a ton of damage, what classes are just innately less tanky than others. This is in Shadowlands, okay? This is Hunters, all specs. Kind of not survival, but all specs. Frost Mage, Ret Paladin, and Healing Priest. And kind of Arms Warrior, but Arms Warrior even has more than a couple of these other specs, in my opinion. Now, in Dragonflight, you have, and this is again in PvE, just so someone doesn't come in my chat and is confused. Hunters they got a 6% avoidance node, or AoE effects, kind of the same thing as avoidance. They got Survival the Fittest, which they can make a 40% or a shorter cooldown 20% that also gets reduced by Born to be Wild. They still have their immunity, and they have a pet that gives them a 20% health increase, and they made their Exil better. There's multiple, like, they gave them like 3 tools, and they're not they're not Warlock, Ellie Shaman, Rogue, Fire Mage tier. But have they entered, in my opinion, have Hunters entered that median average level of defensiveness to where you have the cooldowns to live in extremely difficult damage situation? Yes. Yes, they do. Hunters have been taken off of this list. Frost Mage gained greater invis. They have been taken off this list. Rep Paladin gained, albeit I think a button that needs to be buffed more. If you look on the PTR, they did get Divine Protection as Rep Paladins, but they made it, it says 1 minute on here. It's a 2-minute cooldown on live. Needs to be a 1 minute. Also, Shield of Vengeance needs to just be rethought. It's totally terrible ability. It's really bad. But like they gained a Divine Protection, very good. Don't be like they gained Divine Protection but lose Shield of Vengeance, guys. Shield of Vengeance is fucking trash. Bad ability. Divine Protection. Hopefully they make it a 1 minute. Excellent addition. And they gained Spell Warning, which will be used sometimes for other people, but can be used for yourself. Extremely powerful. Rep Paladins have been moved off of this list. That leaves just Healing Priest. Which they have a nerfed version of Fade, although they just buffed it to 10% again, which you can see on the PTR. But even with the 10% Fade, they are still, and Desperate Prayer, they are still the weakest class defensively in PvE by a mile. And they're also potentially removing Shadow Mend, which means they won't have Masochism if they want it. They are on the weaker side. They are the weaker side. They are alone, in my opinion, in the defensiveness category. They're in a scenario where on really hard content, you actually need to have them PS or GS themselves to live. This happened multiple times last expansion where no other class in the game in Dragonflight will have to think or do that. Think about or do that. But our answer to that isn't to bring Dispersion to the class tree. Between Desperate Prayer, Power Shield, no. Angelic Bulwark. Let's read Angelic Bulwark. When an attack brings you below 30% health, you gain an Absorption Shield equal to 15% of your max health for 20 seconds. Cannot occur more than once every 90 seconds. I'm just going to screenshot this. Okay. Let's make a little paint. Okay, and let's just screenshot an ability that kind of works like this. And let's go to the Shaman tree. Okay, let's pick Enhancement. And let's screenshot this. Okay, so keep in mind, this is a fucking capstone. And this is just a point in the middle of the tree in which you have basically infinite points to get whatever you want in a PvE scenario. The one that's a capstone is when an attack brings you below 30% health. Oh, by the way, I'm not even counting the fact that Nature's Guardian can be stacked 2 times. But I'll just remember that later. You get an Absorb Shield for 15% of your health when you go below 30%, and it can happen every minute and a half. Nature's Guardian is a 2-point talent that when your health is brought below 35%, you instantly heal for 20% of your maximum health, and it has half of the ICD. So it heals you for more than you get an Absorb. It has a higher health threshold, and it can happen twice as often. One is an Absorb. Absorbs can be better, but most of the time when you're dropping below 30, you're never living a giant attack at 30% health. So having that Absorb is not necessarily better than a heal, because the reality is if you're at max health for the thing that might kill you, you'll live, and healing and absorbing up to that point gives you roughly the same value, unless you get the Absorb and then get healed to full health, but that's something that's like super min-max, never happens kind of shit. And it always triggers at a low enough health where it's not going to overheal, so it has decent value. And this one's a fucking capstone, and this one isn't. So saying this is like strong defensive, this is bad. Like this is actually bad. Like even in a class that is so weak defensively, and I don't know exactly where their points need to go on their tree, but the fact that they would have to invest all this just to get here, it's not even powerful enough to consider, and they're the weakest class. Like if they have free points to throw around, they'll get it, but like this power level alone as a single point talent is not high in the slightest. So that's the other thing they named. Desperate Prayer, one of the weaker personals in the game. Power Word Shield, a button that, I mean, that's just, you just should not even be posted here. Angelic Bulwark and Translucent Image and Spell Warding. So let's go through the other ones. Translucent Image is the Fade DR. Fade DR is nice. What was the other thing they mentioned? Spell Warding. Oh, that's the passive magic DR, right? Yeah. Passive magic DR is nice. We feel priests are in an okay spot. You can think that priests are in an okay spot because they're so powerful that they don't need defensiveness. Again, that's a really weird argument to make when previously there were more people in the camp of very clearly the weakest classes in the game due to just a large amount of damage hitting an entire group. But now it is just them. It's just them and no one else. So they're not in an okay spot. I don't know if that needs to be solved with Dispersion, by the way. It can be solved by a few things. It actually wouldn't even take that long. You could just make Angelic Bulwark more accessible and way fucking better. You know, I don't know. You could do some other shit. You could just make them, I don't know. But it's not this. This is not good enough, I don't think. We've also increased the damage reduction from Translucent Image to 10% and separated Phantasm from it. Yeah, that's what I think it's actually even better than this currently. So, I don't know. Yeah, make Desperate Prayer better. Like, just make Desperate Prayer a button that actually matters. Okay, so this is basically how I feel about it. I don't know if my takes were really that great. So, let's start with Shadow Priest, and then I'll call some Holy Priests after it. So I'm just going to call Public real quick. Hey, bud.
Yo, what's up?
Yo, so I kind of just want to give you some space to talk about Blizzard's reasoning and what they think about some of this shit. I'm going to skip all the Disc and Holy stuff unless you want to kind of speak on that again later. But I think even bringing up Shining Force could be interesting because that's something that could have been class tree based and actually really nice utility for Shadow and PvE that you guys won't be getting. Well, no class will be getting it, or no spec will be getting it. But I just want to kind of hear a couple of your takes. So you can kind of start wherever you want.
Sure. So, first off, I just want to kind of say that I think we're just kind of exhausted with some of this. This is just, I feel like they just need to decide what they want to do with priests and kind of stop flip-flopping a little bit. So it's getting a little hard to track what they want. But I do appreciate this post. I'll start off with that. Like, I'm glad we got this. I just hard disagree with a lot of it.
Actually, before you continue, I want to point that out for everyone in every class. Even though the response to this, as far as I can tell, is overwhelmingly negative from every single priest player that is reading it, the fact that this post exists is fucking awesome, and they hopefully whatever feedback they get from this is good and it helps with their direction, but it does not discourage them from making more of these. This post is extremely insightful and is very good for the game in any class that decides to get something like this.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So I'm glad we're having the conversation. I just wish it was a bit more, positive, but, still happy to have it. So I guess we're mostly concerned about the blue post, yeah? Not the changes that happened yesterday?
No, yeah, just the blue post, that's it.
Yeah, so I'll just go top from bottom and give my thoughts, if that works. So kind of starting off, number of active spells. I love to see this. This is something a lot of us were complaining about, so really happy to see this in the tree. I don't actually know what this is going to look like. They gave a few examples of, like, Mind Games, Power Word Life, etc. I don't know, what makes the most sense, but I'm happy they're at least looking at it. This was a big thing we're asking for, so really, really positive. Moving on to the class tree, I think I will kind of generally agree with them. The class tree is in a pretty good spot for Shadow. I think there's some stuff that's missing or, some things I'd like to see changed or added, but overall, it's okay. It's in a pretty, compared to what it started with, way better.
Okay, and one thing that was for sure not as good is I mentioned this at the bottom, the Mind Spike and Mind Flay. What do you think about that currently?
Oh, sorry, Spec Tree?
Sorry, I might have jumped ahead of you.
I can talk about that too, but
well,
yeah, I think...
let's do class tree first. No, I almost got you off track. So class tree, I know when it first came out with Shadow was like Ellie Shaman-esque, early Druid spec. Even though the Druids, I fully understand it needs like a fresh coat of paint, needs like a later class tree feel to it and pathing thing, but like you guys have all the tools for that tree to be great. That's kind of what it felt like here, where you didn't have to spend that much to get your power in the tree, and you really had a ton of points to really grab what you wanted, at least when it was first redesigned. How do you guys feel about it now?
Yeah, I mean, as a Shadow Priest, you're getting just about everything you could want. Obviously, we're missing some of the big stuff like Silence or Shining Force or some of the other things they covered below. So a lot of the stuff we were like, hey, we want to be added, they covered in the bottom of the post, which is great. But as far as what's here now, I mean, it's almost as good as we could ask for, I think, aside from those. They even moved Tithe Evasion into the tree from the Shadow Tree and then made Hallucinations baseline. So they actually took feedback we gave quite recently on, merging some stuff out of our spec tree and putting it in the class tree or making it baseline. So yeah, overall, pretty happy with it. We can get the things that we want as a Shadow Priest, albeit, whether or not you like them, that's a different conversation. But, it's overall, in a positive state. I think there's a couple, like the bottom left middle-ish sections. Yeah, I think you're even talking about Angelic Bulwark a little bit. Like those could be better, not super enticing as a Shadow Priest, but I think they even said that they're working on those. So,
Okay, then I'll probably leave that off because, like, I know, strikingly enough, my last conversation with you about the class tree for Shadow was like, this is so good, and then I immediately talked to healers and they were like, this is so restrictive and we can't get nearly like it's like a completely different world. So if they're still working on it, maybe there's gonna be a decent bit of changes there.
Yeah, so we'll see. And to kind of cover in, I guess if we skip over the disc and holy sections of the post and kind of go down to the class tree where they covered that stuff.
Definitely.
So starting out, they covered Silence first, I think. Oh boy. Yeah, I mean, it's just I'm glad they gave the reasoning, but there only being 2 specs in the game without a baseline interrupt is just it's pretty bad. I totally understand this is a problem in PvP, but I see no reason why they can't just, I mean, shadow word interrupt into the class tree. That's just a 24-second kick, not a silence, just a 24-second kick that all 3 specs can talent into, and then if shadow once, they can upgrade that into silence into the
There's
spec
actually
tree.
precedent for that as well, because like very similarly, evokers have a very similar setup where you grab Quell almost guaranteed in your class tree, and then just very early on as a choice node you have to go through. They make you choose whether you want it to be reduced to like the DPS like interrupt cooldown number, where I mean, Shadow Priest could be the exact same thing, right?
Yeah, I just can't. I mean, Mythic Plus is probably one of my favorite parts of the game, and I just can't imagine like the pain that Hole Your Disc are gonna go through when they're in LFG trying to pug keys, and everyone's like, well, that's one less kick for my group. This gets harder, so I don't like. Why would you risk that?
Yeah, and the duality of that argument is -1 kick +1 PI. Right.
Yeah, I mean, okay,
yeah.
that's okay. This is the biggest problem, I think. All of the examples they gave below about like quote like some of this utility is just too good, or would make them too good for PvP. They didn't talk about PvE as much in here, which is unfortunate. But I think reading between the lines, what it sounds like they're saying is because you have PI and because you have twins, we're kneecapping the rest of your utility. And I was always scared of this. I was scared of it from like a damage perspective, but the post really seems to kind of hearken that you have enough already, you can't get more stuff. And looking at what we have, the only thing that really sticks out is twins and PI. Obviously Fort, I mean, you know, that's there too. Don't want to, you know, forget about that. But, you know, saying that we can't get an interrupt or that we can't get a movement like a movement jump ability like Vault of the Heavens, or kind of like smaller stuff like Spectral Guys or Shining Force. I don't know. It's just,
dude, Shining
it's very
Force isn't even
disheartening.
small. Like Shining Force is actually sick. Like Shining Force is such a good ability, and it's not overpowered. Like again, this must have been a PvP thing because like
It must have, yeah.
Yeah. And but that's the thing is like the classes feel bad when they feel like it's only them. You guys are honestly, this is true. Like you guys are the only class that I've seen that is just getting your PvE specs are getting borked by PvP interaction. That's not something where it's like, oh, it's happening to everyone. It actually isn't.
Yeah, and I think it's because on the scale of stuff being added, like twins is so powerful, and I feel like that's the reasoning for pulling back a little bit is because you have this. So I mean, I don't want to have the PI conversation again because we've had it a bunch, but
Yeah.
I mean, it's just super unfortunate that that's kind of feels like where we're at. And it just feels like we're going to have less fun because of it, you know? So yeah, I think Mind Bomb was the one I was the most sad about. I think, you know, they didn't really address it in this post. They kept talking about priests in general in PvP, and they didn't really address kind of the PvE problems. But we've been talking about, you know, giving Shadow specifically a reason and something cool that they bring to your group in a PvE setting. And we have, right now, all you get is Silence and Dispersion, which to any other spec in the game, that's just a guaranteed thing that you get. It's not something special. And I think Mind Bomb, Spectral Guys, like any of these could be that thing of like, yep, we have a Shadow Priest, great. That brings an AoE stun to our group, you know, or something like that. And we have literally nothing. So it's really sad that they don't talk about utility balance at all here in a PvE scenario because, I mean, you cover this a lot actually, and it's been fun to look at. It's just, it's wildly inaccurate kind of when it comes to group buffs and crowd control, and especially like the usefulness of those abilities in Mythic Plus especially. I just feel like they need to spend more time like really thinking about where they want Priest to be.
You said you were just spitting bars. You said, and right now all you get is Silence and Dispersion, and for any other spec in the game that is basically a given. That's 100% accurate. And you have other tools design-wise in your class that make you unique, but they're not powerful enough. Like
Exactly.
Vampiric Embrace is something that could be extremely powerful, and it's been bad for a very long period of time. You know, you have things like Mass Dispel, but you don't have to bring that to a group. And like, just imagine, like, yeah, Mythic Plus is an argument. It's also like, you know, something people do a lot, but it's like a 5-man group. So like every single thing you can bring to a 5-man matters outside of your damage. What are you bringing a Priest for in Mythic Plus right now outside of, I mean, are you even PIing someone else? You're probably PIing yourself. Like,
yeah, I mean, if in a world of Dragonflight, obviously Twins is a thing that you'll bring. You get stamina. The problem with all of these answers, Vampiric Embrace, Mass Dispel, is if you already have a Holier Disc Priest as your group's healer, none of that is new. It's just, oh yeah, now we get 2 of those things. And I think that's why it just feels bad. Like if you bring an Ellie Shaman and you already have a Resto Shaman, there's still new things that you bring as that Ellie Shaman, or you do things in different ways. And I think the class tree and the spec trees are a great opportunity, and they've done this with other specs, but it feels like they're restrained on doing that for Priest, is what it feels like.
No, you guys are getting hard held back by PvP interaction with Priest, which is completely, like, I don't know how they could do this differently, because if Priest didn't exist, I would never even make this argument, because I actually think every other class has handled it well. And the trees are not, they're not like this weird argument between PvE and PvP. It's basically just Priest, and I don't know. I just don't know how they can separate it.
It's hard. Like, I don't want to, like, I'm not trying to talk bad about devs, because designing a spec for both PvP and PvE with good choices in both, that's really hard. I don't want to knock that, but I think to kind of shrug it off one or the other because it's hard is just, it's just disappointing. I think we can do better. And whether or not that's like, maybe you just need PvE talents and PvP talents, or I don't know how they can separate it, or what, right?
Yeah,
but
that's the thing. Here's why I don't think that'll ever happen. Because if this was an issue for every other class, I could see them 100% adding this. It's basically an issue for you, and that's why I don't think they would make like a full game-wide system where they have PvE talents.
I said that though because in the post they keep pointing out that like other people are getting stuff, and because they're getting stuff, that's a problem for priests because you can't also get it. And they said like knockbacks in PvP are, you know, increasing in Dragonflight, and it's like, well, if that's your stance, why are all of these specs getting it but priests can't? Really just feels like someone's has different guiding principles for how they're designing priests than these other specs. And I guess what I was trying to say is, if they want to go this approach, I mean, it's just not, they're not showing it elsewhere. So I don't know.
I want to offer a potentially different solution as well. So warriors have been kind of, the warrior class tree is one that's like been pretty transcendent. It's the only class in my knowledge that just has completely different abilities at different points in its class. It's the same class tree, but the abilities actually just get replaced based on what spec you're playing all across the thing. Even the tooltips will be the same, like the icons, but the tooltips will just say a different number or be different based on the spec you are. I wonder if they could consider doing this for priest or any other class in the future that has this issue, where it just has like a PvP or PvE note on it. So like if you took this shitty thing I have on my note right here, the paint that shows this tooltip, it just has like a PvE and PvP thing. And in PvE, it's dispersion. And in PvP, it's actually just angelic bulwark. And that's acknowledging that dispersion would probably be too good for priest and PvE. That's fine, PvP. But in PvE, it makes total sense that you have access to this ability. And for shadow priest, it actually just gives you dispersion in PvP. You can do both without having to fuck around with class and spec tree stuff. But also, I acknowledge that a lot of times the community is not good at coming up with solutions, and that may not be a good solution, and you're good at identifying problems. I think what we can very safely say is like a lot of the reasoning here and things they're not getting is absolutely in PvE, what we focus on, 100% a problem. And it needs to be addressed. And let's talk about, so we talk about silence, let's talk about Vault of the Heavens. Because this is this maybe was the singular paragraph that threw me the most off.
Yeah, I mean, this is something cool that people have been asking for back for a while. It's a legendary right now. Obviously, using it as a legendary is, you know, if you care about damage, you won't do it. But it's just such a cool and fun ability, and I think we had it as a glyph at one point. We were always asking for it back. I for sure get the reasoning that they're saying, well, you're just always going to take this, so why even have it as a choice? I do think that's like the whole purpose of the talent tree, is that this person thinks that you'll always take it, but I think there's always going to be fun scenarios where you won't, which is, I think, perfect design for a talent in Dragonflight, especially utility talent.
It is very likely in raids that a DPS player especially will always play Vault of the Heavens until they get to a fight where they know someone has to soak something and get back to their group, and then they'll play grip for that fight. Or Mythic Plus, you know that this tank is doing this giant grouping pull, and he has to come back, and he's like, and he's really slow. So you will play grip for that dungeon specifically to grip that guy out of danger for a specific pull to work. That's the entire point of choice nodes and the entire point of the talent trees. So like, seeing them post that it's like just too good, it's like, look, I'm gonna be real with you, dude. Most choice nodes in this game are going to be picked like 90-10%. That's reality. And the fact, and it's still good that other option exists as long as the choice nodes are made properly. So Yeah, this I just completely disagree with this whole. I think this paragraph is extremely out of touch.
And I think it's a difference in movement. We always talk about like how good a spec is at movement, but I think this one really it's important to distinguish instant movement or displacement versus movement speed. So Shadow and Priest do have a lot of movement speed buttons. Feather and Body and Soul are both like 40% movement speeds, but our ability to be displaced quickly is not something we can do. And a lot of other specs can. I think was that weird Shaman talent that they added earlier, or like Blink, Door of Shadows obviously isn't a thing anymore, but like those kinds of movement abilities, or Warlock Gateway, an ability to move somewhere instantly or have some like burst of displacement is something we'd love to have, and is I think they're kind of categorizing that as the same thing as movement, but there are times when one is better than the other, and I think having Vault of the Heavens would be so huge for Shadow and Priest in general.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially when you're talking about like think about mages, right? Like someone could say like mages have bad movement, because if you think about movement speed, mages have hysterically bad, like really bad movement speed. But it doesn't matter because their one spell, Shimmer, and obviously Alter Time and the other thing they just added, are like displacement or moving things over a quick distance instantly or very quickly is just always have been the best form of movement. Situational movement like that is better than passive movement speed in a lot of cases, or just movement speed buffs. And Shadow or Priest in general is just one of the slowest classes in the game overall. So the choice of this specific class to have this stance is something that they desperately need, basically. So
yeah, and I mean, they said that they added like you can have Body and Soul and Angelic Feather at the same time, but they don't stack. They're both 40% movement speeds, so they kind of just gave you 4 charges of Feather or 3 charges of Feather and are calling it the same. And I don't think we need that. I think having one or the other and having Vault of the Heavens would be amazing.
I wonder if the developer and the player base in this case that have not really deeply thought about this. A lot of times when you're thinking about how things play and you're like, man, priests do have bad movement, you instantly think in your head as to like how it is to move on your character right now on live, because that's what's in your head. Well, guess what priests have been playing most of this expansion? Night Fae and Venthyr, right? So like you're going to just have to jump from that to not like in your mind you're like, oh, you have Soul Shape, but dude, take Soul Shape away, take Venthyr away if you were like disc early. Obviously I know there was a lot of people who played Kyrian or Necro. This is entirely off the point, but like that like really matters when you lose those spells, and maybe a lot of people haven't come to terms with that yet until they actually log in and don't have them.
Yeah, so I think we were one of the early points of feedback was to add this like this feels like a perfect thing to put in the talent tree, especially if Leap of Faith is already a talent. People also suggested putting Door of Shadows in here. I mean, no one else has it. It'd be pretty cool, considering we also have Mind Games. I think just the point is, we don't necessarily need more movement speed buttons. We don't need Feather and Body and Soul.
Was that your idea?
I don't remember.
Did you just YOLO that?
No, we've been talking about it for months.
Dude, Door of Shadows would be sick. That like makes sense. You're literally a Shadow Priest. Fucking put that on the class tree immediately. That is a great idea.
And to be clear, I think Door of Shadows is actually better than Vault of the Heavens. So that's why I've always been kind of like, I never understood this paragraph when they're saying they feel like it's too strong. I don't know, but yeah.
Damn. Okay, well, love that.
So that's all the class stuff, I think, to cover.
Spectral Guys, but I'm imagining you don't care about that.
Spectral Guys was just thematically cool. I don't agree with what they're saying, that it like breaks the game or will break PvP, considering it's a racial for Night Elves. So I don't know. I don't want to crap on their argument too much, but it doesn't really feel like it has a whole lot of ground, considering how many people are swapping to like Shadow Meld Night Elves for Mythic Plus and stuff already. I don't know. I always thought this talent was cool and thematic. I'd love to see it back.
Yeah, this is. I feel like that's maybe what if people weren't already mad from reading, well, Hunters, Rogues, and Mages already do this often enough. As if like having 3 classes at all that's stealth is like too much when you're just making arguments over and over again that 6 classes out of 12 or 11 out of 12 is the reason you can't have something added, and then using 3 and being like, there's just no way. It's like the argument just isn't consistent.
Yeah, and like if it's broken for PvP, I'm not qualified to speak on that. But to your point, if that's what it is, well, in PvE make it Spectral Guys, in PvP make it something else. You know, I don't know.
I think Priest needs this more than anything. Is just you need to have the ability for things to work in both, because just no class should have to really deal with that. So all right.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, no one should have to suffer in one game environment versus the other because of the other one. Like as a PvE Shadow, you shouldn't have to suffer gameplay consequences because PvP exists. You know, that should never be, or vice versa. So, and I know that's their goal. I'm not trying to crap on it. It's just, I hope we can get there.
All right, hell yeah. All right, I think that's about it. Thanks for the talk, bud.
Do you want to hear about Shadow?
Oh yeah.
You asked about the spike stuff earlier.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
I can leave
yes.
if you don't like me.
No, no. Please talk about Shadow. I forgot we haven't talked about that. We went under it in the tree and came back to it after the class.
Yeah. All right. So this is the spice. This is the one I'm most upset about. I think they talked about Dark Ascension and Void Eruption are unfinished. You know, they're lacking. What do they call it? Identity right now. Completely agree. They're both pretty lame cooldowns that have been kind of stripped away from what they used to be. And we literally got Dark Ascension 2 weeks ago, and the blue post is basically saying, we get it that they're bad or they don't have identity, but we're not going to fix it by Dragonflight launch. And this is just, frankly, this is the hardest thing I've ever had to read in these feedback posts, because Shadow's been reworked or changed like majorly.
More than any class in the game.
The last 3 expansions in a row, you know, and that's just the recent history. And so to have this happen potentially again, where it's like, sorry guys, we ran out of time. And it's like, I can't, it's just not, I don't know what to say. Cause it's just like, if you're going to make big changes, like giving a spec a new cooldown and not finishing it by the launch, I'd rather you just revert it. So I don't know. It super feels bad. And again, I don't quite understand, because they did mention that they do want to iterate on it, but they can't make major changes to fix what they called out. I don't know. It's confusing and just really disheartening that after getting a long delay before even getting initial spike stuff earlier. I mean, I can leave if you don't like me
no,
anymore.
No. Please talk about Shadow. I forgot we haven't talked about that. We went under it in the tree and came back to it after the class.
Yeah. All right. So this is the spice. This is the one I'm most upset about. I think they talked about Dark Ascension and Void Eruption are unfinished. You know, they're lacking. What do they call it? Identity right now. Completely agree. They're both pretty lame cooldowns that have been kind of stripped away from what they used to be. And we literally got Dark Ascension 2 weeks ago, and the blue post is basically saying, we get it that they're bad or they don't have identity, but we're not going to fix it by Dragonflight launch. And this is just, frankly, this is the hardest thing I've ever had to read in these feedback posts, because Shadow's been reworked or changed like majorly.
More than any class in the game.
The last 3 expansions in a row, you know, and that's just the recent history. And so to have this happen potentially again, where it's like, sorry guys, we ran out of time. And it's like, I can't, it's just not, I don't know what to say. Cause it's just like, if you're going to make big changes, like giving a spec a new cooldown and not finishing it by the launch, I'd rather you just revert it. So I don't know. It super feels bad. And again, I don't quite understand, cause they did mention that they do want to iterate on it, but they can't make major changes to fix what they called out. I don't know. It's confusing and just really disheartening that after getting a long delay before even getting initial feedback, I think it was like 2 months, you know, 2 weeks later, they're already saying that they can't make major changes on our cooldowns. Yeah, it really feels bad.
You're the only class in the game that has a choice node between 2-minute burst damage cooldowns.
Well, and that's the problem. If you ask me which one you take when, I don't know the answer. It's like, I guess I can sim it and tell you the math behind it, but you know, thematically, or kind of like what they're doing to the spec isn't really that game changing. So like the choice between the two becomes really vague and blurry. They mentioned the visual is cool, but if that's the only reason the spell is changing, just add a glyph that changes the way Void Form looks to the Shadow Wings. You know, we don't need to sacrifice gameplay to make it look cool, and that's kind of what it sounds like. Not to like crap on it, because like I think we have time to iterate on it if they want to, and really define what a Void Form Shadow Priest looks like versus
really
Dark
positive.
Ascension, you know?
You've been really positive about these changes. Your issue is not with what they're trying to do. It's the fact that they're getting halfway there and then saying, well, this is just kind of what it's going to be, right? Yeah,
because the tree is unfinished. There's a lot of good ideas in it, but it has a long way to go. There's a lot of bugs that make it hard to test. There's ideas that aren't finished, and it's still, like, you can tell, and we got a bunch of changes just last night. So you can tell that they're still trying to make it work, but, you know, we're not close yet. And I haven't been I've been kind of reserved in my feedback, especially, you know, around numbers and tuning. But the fact that they just dropped, hey, we don't have plans to make major changes, it's on our radar in the future, kind of makes me think that we're running out of time. and it's just really scary to me and a lot of other priests that have kind of gone through this 3-4 times now.
Yeah, the whole running out of time argument is something that hasn't been on our minds in the last couple months, because it's kind of just been like, oh, Dragonflight's just in a little bit. It's actually coming to the point where, and I don't know when, it's like coming up to an expansion where they're like, all right, class designers, remember all that time you spent every single minute at work thinking about these class trees? Well, now we need you to kind of be done with that. We need you to like work on some of this other stuff. And then if that is happening soon, that's very grim. I hope this isn't a sign that other classes, basically the point of these posts is to get feedback, and that's great, but it's only if they act on them. We don't want to see these posts where it's like, here's where things are, because there are a few classes in the game that are actually, like, honestly, like pretty good to go. Like, they're really solid classes. Actually, probably more than half, I would say, are like really, really good spots. But Priest is one of the ones that was iterated on the least, and it's going to feel really bad for classes that took so long to get feedback, specifically Druids and Priests. So, yeah,
hopefully they can figure it out. I mean, you know, they've mentioned, and they're making change. Like, they're making a lot of changes to the specs still. Like, last night we had a big build. There was the one a couple weeks ago that was finishing more things. So it's clear they're still iterating, and they're taking in a lot of our feedback based on what we've been saying. But with each new build, they create more problems as they solve other ones. So there's kind of a bit of catching up to do with, like, and I think you mentioned earlier, like the Mind Spike, Mind Flay problem that they're creating now. You know, that's something else that we need to address. So yeah, I just hope we have time to get through it all. So.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay. Now, sorry. Now I will kick you off after you've had a chance to actually talk about the spec that I brought you on to talk about.
All right. Thanks.
Beautiful.
If people want anything more, there's a ton of great feedback on that forum thread. Like myself and others, there have been 100 posts plus added today. So if you want more thoughts, it's on the forums.
Yep. Here it is. I'll link it. Yeah. There's a ton of posts. Are you on here? Are you spitting bars on this forum?
Yeah. I've written like 15 pages.
Oh yeah.
It feels
there
like
you are.
Yeah, but yeah, we've added 100 thread entries in that thread plus. Today,
oh, so. Jesus. Yeah, you guys are out here writing. Okay.
Yeah, so yeah,
oh, yeah, love
people have feedback.
All right, love talking to you, man. You're very insightful. Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Yep, see you, bye. Hey, bud.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey, so I just wanted to call and get your opinions on the, what is it? The, priest post. Not anything about your classes, like, giga, like, particular, just... I know a lot of priests have a lot of takes about some stuff they've said, and I kind of just want to get a healer perspective. I guess I could ask you about it a little specifically, so we'll skip the shadow stuff, but I'm just kind of interested to hear. So what do you think about as a healer about their bit about the number of active spells? Like, from a healer perspective, they're saying Flash is available to all 3 specs. What is shadow meant for? Obviously, that means probably no masochism. Being locked out in PvP, again, I could try to stay away from PvP, but like now you don't necessarily need it to apply atonement, right? You could use other things with that. How do you feel about as a healer priest dealing with their take on the number of active spells you have?
I think for Holy to start, you have this sort of like flash concentration light that they added to the table, so you're not maintaining a buff forever, but it feels even more mandatory having that sort of like flash heal and heal gameplay in keys or in raid or whatever, because you don't have this like powerful ability. Like you're right that you can take masochism for like the defensive, but also Depth of Shadows was really powerful when it came to key environment, because you could just dot up everything and then increase the healing of your next Shadowman, and you sort of had a decently beefy heal every 15 seconds you could utilize.
I guess they could just make that exact same choice node just work with Flash Heal though, right? So, I mean,
yeah.
That
would be something that they could be able to flex into to help make it more efficient, but I don't know if they would really do it because it has the other Holy Word synergy for something like H-Priest. So it's just weird because of all the areas they're talking about button bloat, they're also saying, oh, well, yeah, we have Holy Word Life that's going to be on hand, which, despite it being at best a 10-second cooldown, I don't think that you're really going to mix that in a ton. It's going to be like a on-the-move snipe heal somebody who's low and move on.
Yeah.
So the button bloat there is kind of strange. I don't know if they're also intending Holy Priest to mix in like Powered Shield. When it comes to disc, Shadowman's been a very iconic ability for him, and so I don't know why they don't try to give it the Powered Shield treatment of just having a lengthy CD to it, and they could even add a lengthier CD if they wanted to, other than the 15 seconds, so that you're mixing it in over longer periods of time, but you're still able to have that iconic ability on hand.
Yeah, I think it's just the fact that it's baseline, right? Because like Holy really has no, or I guess close to baseline because you selected early, but like it's like a button bloat thing where like I think Shadow Mend in general is just more in line with Disc, which is a spec that is in the like mixing between damage and healing, mixing between Shadow and and healing, right? So where maybe it just doesn't make as much sense for Holy.
Yeah. But the other thing is they just made Shadow Mend have no cooldown when Shadow Covenant was up. And so they're just trying to make strides to make Shadow Covenant better. And then now they get rid of Shadow Mend in its entirety. And so it's like, why the hell are we using Shadow Covenant at all in a key environment? We barely have enough Shadow spells to even cast over that duration.
Okay, and then actually, did they say they're removing it, or are they just like, we think it's probably too much? It doesn't seem like it's like the other things where they're like, this is gone.
They said it's the first spell that comes to their mind.
Okay, so that is...
We are working towards removing the spell.
Okay, so working towards means, at least in a sense where they would remove it like immediately, they would at least before removing it make sure that all that kind of gameplay still exists just without it. But basically you're saying you just think that maybe it still makes sense to have. Okay, I actually want to ask you about the class trees a little bit. And we're not going to go like giga in depth, but I know that like I was pretty eye-opening to me the last time I looked at the class trees, because at least not this iteration, but a couple ago, Shadow Priests were like, yo, this is great. We can get like all this stuff we want, super easy to navigate. And then we have a ton of room and good pathing to get stuff we want but don't need based on the encounter, which seemed good. But then I talked to Holy and Disc, and it was like totally different world. Like you were really hard lined into what exactly you needed. There was way less choice, like night and day difference. And then obviously they didn't address a lot of their like defensiveness issues, which we'll get into lower. How do you feel about the Blizzard's idea on how the class tree is at the moment and just how it is in general?
It's gotten better, but it still leaves in a question what's going to happen with Shadowmend. Their justification of like, oh, hey, we know we're not giving you Vault of the Heavens, but we're giving you Body and Soul. And last I checked, those things don't stack, was just super foreign to me with that justification. But in general, yeah, the first row or the first like breakpoint, the 8 points that you could start off with, if you don't need a purge, if you don't need a disease dispel, you can pass off on those. You can spec into more output if you wanted to. You can spec into the utility that you could possibly need. I think that stuff is fine. I think the routing through the tree is better, but there's still just some like dead branches to it. Vamp Embrace is just a total joke of a talent for Holy and Disc Priest. You literally don't have 15 seconds worth of shadow spells to cast.
Yeah, and even if you did, it's like it's not like it's a super powerful CD, right? So
yeah, it's not like healer damage is very high either. So it's always based off that shadow damage. The Void Shield is just terrible. You're not increasing the shield on yourself immediately after you shield yourself and start dealing damage. Your shield has to like tick down a little bit and then replenish itself, which just doesn't really happen that much.
And then what do you think about like the capstone level? I saw some big issues with like, I think Angelic Bulwark is not nearly powerful enough for a capstone level thing, and I think one of the easiest things to fix or make priest defensiveness better. What do you think about the bottom part of this tree?
It's a mess. I mean, in order for a Holy Priest to take Angelic Bulwark, they could take Light's Inspiration, which is our worst defensive conduit, and it's exactly the same. Or you take Crystalline Reflection as a Holy Priest. Again, just why? Angelic Bulwark is worse than Waking Dreams, the Soulbind that you'd get from Dreamweaver. Just straight up worse. It's a lower health breakpoint, which is not helpful. It's less shield as well. It's a higher internal cooldown. It's just kind of a mess across the board. Void Shift I love, but again feels kind of awkward because it's hidden behind Crystalline Reflection or Fade cooldown reduction. And getting a third of the cooldown knocked off Fade to give you 10% DR can be okay in some cases, but not always. You know, a lot of times there's only so many mechanics that you're going to be able to fade. You know, you could fade every Torment on Mythic Jailer or something like that pretty much. But then just having 10 seconds off of it doesn't really do a whole lot for you.
Yeah, I just like YOLO'd a Holy Priest tree real quick, and I basically came to the conclusion that like to get Angelic Bulwark, a lot of the times the more efficient point to get outside of Light's Inspiration is just Crystalline Reflection, so you have access to both Void Shift and Angelic Bulwark. This is like, but it's like you're grabbing the thing that doesn't matter. This is also in the middle of the tree, which kind of, with this tree split into shadow and damage, and then healing, and then like holy magic, right? And then in the middle, you should have the things that kind of make the most sense for both. This happens at the top of the tree. Like PI is central, the Dispel kind of uniquely central to all of them. All this stuff that could be used by all is in the middle, and then the thing you choose to have in the middle of the capstone level is something that only has really any relevance for Disc at all. And that just seems so bizarre.
They could fix that though.
Yeah. They could fix it and move it, and then also the Light's Inspiration. I feel like why have such a easily the weakest class in the game, Healing Priest defensively, and then Desperate Prayer is something that could even just have like a DR element to it and could just be made better, and then you could use that with this node, but you choose to make it a heal. Like that's ridiculous, right?
Yeah, so I think what I'd like to see is twofold. With like Lightspin's Inspiration, just have it as it's a 2-point node already. Make it further increase your maximum health instead of adding like a hot component to it. And then Crystalline Reflection, make it so that self shields are going to be having like a greater value to it. That way it's actually more realistic for Holy, Disc, and Shadow to feel good about shielding themselves before a mass damage event.
True. Definitely true. And they even mentioned that down below here where they said that like when they mentioned priest defensiveness, you know, they mentioned power word shield. They actually used that word as like defensiveness, and it's like hopefully they realize that that's not real. That's like something that you might do once as like a shadow priest or something like right before a hit, but like a priest, the way that priests heal, it's just like that's not something you're considering. But if it had a better value on you to kind of fix your defensiveness like you're suggesting, then it could be something you do.
Yeah, and that way it's not the flashiest of an end to your class talent tree, and it's a lot of investment to be able to get there. It says, okay, I'm giving up extra mind games damage and cooldown reduction so that I can be tankier. A lot of people are going to make that decision, and that seems like it's the one that's carved out for us, but they could actually just make it more of a reality. I mean, if you're having a Shadow Priest shielding themselves on Prog or something like that, you know they're desperate for just anything possible, and that's just not a good sign. But what if they made that better? You know, what if they made that a lot stronger for it on yourself?
Yeah, definitely. And they gave you Void Shift value. Void Shift is definitely sick, but the
super fun.
Yeah, and then so we kind of like went over the defensiveness. So you're saying that I actually kind of like that, like Power Word Shield, even though it's obviously increasing in power level in this expansion in general. Just having it be, if you want it to actually be something to help you live, that's fine. And then we kind of briefly touched on the movement, but just to kind of talk about Vault of the Heavens, at least when I was talking to public about it, the Vault of the Heavens is like just like this entire paragraph is so weird because it's like. That's the whole point of choice nodes. They're saying, like, we don't want to make this a choice node because we feel like you'll most likely pick the other one. Meanwhile, that's every choice node in the entire game. Like, almost every single choice node is like a 90-10, 80-20 pick ratio, and there is absolutely a world where you would want regular Leap of Faith on a ton of PvE encounters and dungeons. So it's like an actual real choice node, and the fact that they actually considered it and then kind of came to the conclusion that they didn't want to do it is weird, especially with a class that has such bad movement in general. And like you mentioned before, the whole like, oh well, we gave you Body and Soul and Angelic Feather, and I don't know if they don't know this, like you said, they don't stack, so it's basically just like you have 4 charges of Angelic Feather, which is just, you know, it's not good.
Yeah, but the other thing is they always like put out one problem, and that's my whole problem with this whole post, is they put out one potential solution or one potential option, and then they shoot it down and they don't really look elsewhere. Because we just talked about the end tier of your talents being all these other little like sticks that you're trying to put together to build a bonfire with. You're taking so many little things just to have some decent defensive. Why are they not making you choose between Bulwark or Vault of the Heavens or Void Shift or Vault of the Heavens or something like that? I'm fine if there's a sacrifice to get the movement speed that I need. You don't need to put it up at the top of the tier with Leap of Faith or something like that.
Yeah.
You know, I'm 100% on board if they make it have some kind of sacrifice tied to it. Just give us some kind of option. They just did that as well with Holy Priest. Look at the restitution. You have to go so far down the tree, and you give up throughput to make sure that you live.
Yeah, that's a tough one because that's, I mean, if you think, like, it's kind of hard to compare it to other classes that have always had cheat deaths. Like obviously Rogue cheat death and Cauterize and things like that are just like way easier to come by in the trees, and it's not like something you have to invest your whole thing. The thing is though, it's kind of weird to complain about it because like so many classes, if they had a capstone level node in their spec tree that gave them a cheat death, that'd be like, holy shit, that's insane. But it's also still weird though, because this is true in any tree, and for what it's worth, they've done a good job of fixing this. In spec tree specifically, if you have like utility nodes, but they are truly insanely powerful utility, which means it's worthy of a capstone level thing. The choice of losing throughput to gain that utility is so weird and feels so bad. And I feel like that's kind of the case here, unless it ends up being a 1-point option and you don't have to invest multiple things you wouldn't otherwise want.
Yeah, how you get there is definitely weird. You have like a mix of damage and Prayer of Mending centric stuff, but the idea, the general concept, I think is good. Okay, so we kind of talked a bit about Holy and Disc. How do you feel about the renew Power Word Shield different style ramp in this upcoming expansion? Do you think that is something that they don't really need to majorly change? Will that work? Yeah, it's totally fine. Disc and Legion had Plea, which originally increased with mana cost, and it was terrible, and they fixed it. And so End of Legion was just, you cast a spell, which does like almost no healing. It just applies Atonement to the target, and then you move on. And then later on down the line, they're saying, okay, we're just going to spam Powered Shield to apply your atonements. I'd much rather have shield feel like a potent cooldown and a choice as to who I'm casting it on, because it is so iconic and is so powerful, or should be powerful. I'm totally fine with Renew just being in that way. I know it looks weird, it feels weird, but like people will get over it.
And then the Shadow Covenant changes. Obviously, you talked about the Shadow Men thing, but they made it so this is actually a recent, like not too like they did this a while ago, a couple builds ago, where they made it so
Men has no cooldown, no use anymore.
Yeah, but they also made it so it's not like so you can press this more often, but it's not like you can't press holy spells during it. So it's way easier to actually get off.
The problem is you just don't have a lot of spells that you'd actually utilize now that Shadowman is in the bin.
Yeah.
Because the advantage Shadowman had previously was that it was healing for quite a bit more than Flash Heal, especially when you had Depth of Shadow spec'd into it. And so now when you're only able to use it offensively, pretty much, there's not as much usability for it. There's not as much value really for taking it. And yay, there's no downsides, but you know, if you ever are stuck casting non-buff spells, it's still gonna feel bad over the duration.
Yeah, definitely true. They could even do they could do a couple things with that, right? So you're saying like they could make Shadow Men spammable, or they could make it a shorter window, but then making those things more impactful. So it's something you're pressing as like a short burst healing cooldown rather than just being in a phase for a long period of time outside of just the increased damage.
I suppose. I think if they commit down the path of getting rid of Shadow Men, though, then I don't really see much point of having Shadow Covenant continue to exist in its current form or any form. This is like the 5th iteration they've had for Shadow Covenant over the years. And when you talk about like 90-10% pick rates or something, Shadow Covenant was always at the bottom of the barrel for pick rates when it was competing against other options. I don't know why it's still here, to be honest.
Okay. What else is there in this post? So we kind of talked about it a little bit again, but I just want to hear from a healer's perspective, since you are the people actually affected by this. You guys are the 2 specs that you main and primarily play are going to be the only specs in the entire game without a kick. How do you feel about that?
God, that hurts. I mean, it's one of those things that they could easily make it that it's going to be another one of those sacrifice picks or another of those picks that you're going to have to pick and choose between. From what I've seen from the dungeons at the moment, it doesn't seem like there's an overabundance of kicks, and that'll be all right. But it's still just very strange, because I know some specs, you know, Holy Paladin, for example, there's no way they're going to be going after it the last time I checked their class tree, unless they're very heavily focusing on a 5-man build with a lot of damage options.
Yeah,
there's a lot of sacrifice and committal to doing it.
But there should be that. I actually agree
exactly,
with
that. 100%. And
like,
that's fine. It's just weird that it's not even present at all.
Yeah, I actually love their idea with Paladin and Druid. Even though the Druid tree is going to get redone and the Pally class tree needs Jesus, and should be redone or moved around a lot. But the whole thing where they have to like kind of go out of the way to get Rebuke makes sense. The Druid tree is going to be moved around a lot, and there isn't going to be these 3-point nodes that are there. Obviously, they've universally removed those from every class tree or are in the process of doing it. But like having to get a Mythic plus damage-centric build to get kick and something typically given to Ferals and Guardians makes sense. It should not just be something you can select instantly, especially because Moonkins could potentially have 2. There's a bunch of stuff. Like I actually really agree with their philosophy for that. But like you're just saying like, yeah, but like why even have the option at all? You could put silence on like the far right side of the tree, and it's not something you want to get all the time, and you'd have to give up something for it, but it could have value, right?
Yeah, I mean, I like, you know, this is not as focused as what we really talk about with raids and M+, but even as a healer, I want to be able to quest and level as a healer. But what happens when you invariably have a rare or a quest mob or something to kill that casts seals on themselves, or it's a lead or something like that, and you can't actually fear it or mind control it or any of that other garbage? You're just sitting there at the mercy of somebody else coming around to help you kick it. It's just kind of silly how those things are. For some reason, you can't just put together a solo questing build or something that'll have a kick for you, which is not even an option to begin with, when the entire point of these talent trees is that you should have wider and more diverse options in terms of how you play, even if they're not always going to be good for raider competitive content.
Yeah, definitely. This is actually really important to me, and you're a PvE player mainly. You guys are you're just losing Shining Force. One of the only things in the game that, I mean, Shining Force was very impactful. Like, if you needed to move a mob in the downstairs phase of Anduin, or you needed to knock in ads on Lihivam, or just plenty of bosses that needed things moved. Shining Force was just one of the very best abilities in the game in PvE. And they're saying they're removing it because of PvP, but now I don't think there's the only thing in the game that I could think of that works
the closest thing to Shining Force is High Explosive Trap, and they gave that to Hunters, and that's like kind of Shining Force, so you can place it and it'll knock away, just like you could target someone else, they could move to it and you could press it. Not really necessarily similar with Thunderstorm and Blast Wave, but like it's just like kind of gone, and I don't feel like maybe they said it's a PvP thing. A few PvPers were like, it's not even a super high pick rate in PvP, so it's like I just feel like they might be a little lost with that. What do you think about that?
Again, I can't fathom it. I think Shining Force is one of the best abilities for priests just in general, because when it comes to certain utility out there, you know, you won't notice Shackle Undead until you need it. And Shining Force is very much the same way. It was one of those abilities that being able to cast a pushback off somebody else or cast it even off yourself if you wanted to, you never really noticed it until you needed it, to the point that most people didn't even recognize what the knockback was when I would use it in pug groups or something like that. They say, what the hell was that? That wasn't the Druid knockback or anything. And you have to explain to them how this, you know, crazy ability works. So it's really, really disappointing because, like you said, there's always a fight or two every tier where having Shining Force on hand could make quite a bit of difference. And again, it's the sort of point of this overall post is that, oh, other people have this stuff, so you guys can't. Sorry.
Yeah, definitely feels bad. And then one thing they said, they will not, for similar reasons to Silence, which we don't think are great reasons, they're not adding Dispersion to the Priest class tree just to kind of tie together defensiveness.
That's fine.
Yeah. I think that it's fine that Priests don't get Dispersion. My only real take with that was that if you gave a Holy or Disc Priest Dispersion in PvE, it would not make them broken at all. Like, it would just be good because they're the weakest defensive class in the game. But I don't think it has to be Dispersion. Like, it can be, you know, other classes like Havoc have Netherwalk in their spec tree, albeit Netherwalk is in a problem spot and needs to be moved. But, like, other classes have had to make this decision. They've made it easier for Shadow to actually select it normally when going through their tree. They just need to give you, I think, they just need to increase the potency of all of your defensive tools. So, like, the Fade thing's fine. They buffed it to 10% again. Make Angelic Bulwark better. Make Desperate Prayer better, or have some nodes that make it better. I'm assuming it's kind of how you feel about that.
Yeah, exactly. Light's Inspiration, use that to increase your maximum health pool instead of adding a hot at the end of it. That would make it incredibly better. Crystalline Reflection, if you can find a way, if you cast Shield on yourself, the shield's going to heal or absorb 30% more damage or something along those lines. Make it feel more powerful to say, oh, big hit's coming, I should shield myself. You know, look at Shadowlands, you shield yourself, you're like, oh boy, 5k damage or something out of my 70, 80k health pool. But if it's a powered shield, it's a choice that you're making on who you want to defend before a big hit happens. And if that happens to be you a lot of times, then cool. You're able to save other people and have it slightly less value. I feel like that makes sense. You're able to share that absorb and share that defensive power with somebody else, but you're not going to have it be as powerful or as potent. They have so many of these little talent nodes which don't feel good, like the improved Fade cooldown, like Light's Inspiration, like Crystalline Reflection, that if they wanted to make a decent level, I would say our defensive level is really low right now. If they wanted to bring it to a mid-level, then have us invest in these different talent points.
Definitely. I also, I think some people in chat brought up a good point too, is that I mentioned this earlier, is like you could definitely do the Warrior Tech. Like, Warrior Tech is so underused. Their class tree just changes based on what spec you are, and there's just different buttons there based on what your class is, and it makes total sense. Like, you could do the same thing for Priest. Like, you could have, you know, if you don't want them to have Dispersion, you could have a more powerful Angelic Bulwark or a more powerful Light's Inspiration in the capstone level, but then for Shadow, like, that's Dispersion, right? And it's just literally a different button. It doesn't, and doing it in the capstone feels weird because you never want to be spending capstone stuff for that kind of stuff, but, like, that idea is there. And then one more thing I wanted to ask you is I just wanted to ask you about Holy for a second, because I think after looking at all the healers, I feel like most healers are better versions of themselves in Dragonflight, and Holy does not feel that way. I feel like Holy feels like its playstyle. Again, they haven't started tuning stuff yet. The worst thing is I hate, like, class Discord Theorycraft numbers dudes being like, they're not all like that, but just the ones that are like that, where they're like, well, you know, it's actually this and this and this, and it's tuned really well at the moment. Like, they have not even begun tuning. I'm talking purely design. Like, monks, druids, paladins, they have so many more tools than they have now to do things they were unable to do before, or to enhance what they were able to do before, their niche. It feels like Holy is just, it's like taking a step back, and it's the only healer like that feels like that to me. Do you agree with that?
Almost.
Okay.
I think that there are so many different talent points for so many different things. That's kind of a over bloat for things that don't reasonably change up your gameplay and playstyle. For example, you have Benediction, which we're used to, where Prayer of Mending is going to leave Renew on the target. Then you have, I think, 4 or 5 different talent points. Oh no, it's actually 6 or 7 talent points that are also augmenting Prayer of Mending. An ability that you just cast on cooldown every 10, 12 seconds and then move on from there. And so it's just very weird to take all of these points. You say, well, I'm going to cast it anyway. It's nice to have just more passive buffs to something. Meanwhile, if you want to even put together a build for Sanctify, Prayer of Healing, Circle of Healing, all these AoE traits, they're in this corner on the left side, and then you have to be able to go down towards the tree and cut right across from this whole 9-point branch of single target talents. So it seems like they're adding too much into it, which sort of feels restrictive as you're trying to put together a focused build. If you're saying, I want to be able to put together an AoE build, it's kind of tough too, because then you have to cross over
I see that.
heal buffs and everything to get towards your Echo of Light. You know, you have this one universal mastery buff that everybody's going to want to go after, and then you have to cross single target to be able to get it. It's very strange in that way.
Okay.
And you can completely spec out of like all of your damage and everything, and even spec out of like your AoE Holy Word to be able to put together some builds. But it doesn't feel like you're properly sort of rewarded for doing that or becoming even more powerful, because the spec tree is kind of cluttered.
Yeah, that I definitely feel that, and especially because I feel like the single target element is kind of doing the whole flash concentration light, right? Like that's like kind of the idea of it. Do you feel like they've gone the right direction with that? Because I know flash concentration right now is like a big reason why Holy Priest is very good, but I don't know if it's the game, like the power level of it. I don't know if the gameplay is like something that people like super like. How do you like how they're handling removing flash concentration but adding a few of it back, outside of the fact that it seems like it clutters up the tree a bit?
Outside of the clutter, I think Lightweaver is about the perfect compromise, and people kind of forget that Holy Priest was never brought to Legion or BFAM Plus because it couldn't actually heal the content. And then you kind of had a combination of Shadowlands where the bosses will have like a lot of trash can kind of bosses, kind of like the Halkias, which don't really do anything. But then you also had all the legendaries, which really opened things up for healing in a 5-man environment. So Lightweaver is kind of that perfect combination. But because of how cluttered and awkward this tree is, I'm kind of worried that you're going to be pushed into playing Lightweaver for a raiding environment as well, because not only are the points very efficient and powerful and like the Theory Crafter stuff, but also how the tree routes doesn't make you kind of cross lines or cross into suboptimal picks for your build, because you don't really care about a Prayer of Healing buff if you're running with Flash Heal and Heal. Well, guess what? You don't have to worry about it because it's all pushed into this far left side corner that you can ignore.
Yeah, I also feel like having a spot heal identity is also something that you maybe are a little scared of having be your main thing, because that's one thing I think they've actually increased with every other healing spec, is that, you know, like even though it's 10 seconds now, the instant Vivify is something where like that big burst of healing out of nowhere is kind of like something they didn't really have before with Mistweavers. And like Power Word Shield outside of your ramp is something that is, when you press that on someone, is actually going to matter. You know, classes that normally Resto Shamans, if you play with them, or Paladins are kind of hard carrying Mirage style spot healing. You know, that kind of stuff is like design wise getting more powerful in this expansion. So like having the ability to have like more of a raid healing focus and having you be able to fully double down on that if you want to without having to get a bunch of cringe talents is probably something that needs to happen.
Yeah, well, especially because Holy Priest is a lot more utility that it brings to the raid than, you know, Mistweaver, Evoker, or Resto Druid, I would argue. You know, they're having all their utility rolled into class trees. Meanwhile, Divine Hymn is giving you an additional 10% healing buff to the entire raid after the channel. You're getting Symbol of Hope as usual. And like you said, they can fill in the spot heal. You could potentially, I would argue right now, you would play a single target play style unless you were forced to be into that sort of AoE niche. Yeah. And Holy's vibe has always been that you can be more flexible in its healing play styles, which is something Mistweaver doesn't really have, I would argue, right now. And Evoker definitely does not have right now in terms of the variance in terms of how you can play.
Yeah, that's good. Very insightful. Do you have any other bits you'd like to get out about Priest before I go do some other stuff?
I was talking up a lot of Holy, so if you want to talk a little bit about Disc right now.
Yeah, sure.
They were talking in the article about how they wanted to put together like a powered shield and like smite build and everything like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's an odd bit with Disc because they're pushing you to go to this far left side to take like Divine Aegis if you're going to have crit heals out of powered shield to absorb even more damage and everything like that. and then pushing you to take things like Aegis of Wrath, which would make your powered shield really meaty to absorb 50% more damage. It seems like the far left and far right sides of the tree are kind of two different ways to put together a build for 5-mans, where you're always going to be pushed into taking things like Light's Wrath and Evangelism for a raid, but they almost want to make like an offensive, a damage-focused build on the right, and then like a healing-focused build on the left for how you play 5-mans. But the confusing thing is that Disc has always heavily struggled with doing enough atonement healing in a 5-man environment to top everybody, because there's not really a good independent variable to make healing increase with atonement in 5-mans, the way, you know, healing Tide Totem or Divine Hymn would increase, right?
Yeah, dude, just like the thing that I remember in my mind with Disc is like being in a group with a Disc Priest as opposed to every other healer, and being in a Grievous week where there's like passive damage happening and, and everyone's gotten to 5 stacks. There's just that feeling in the whole group of like, oh, we're already dead, right? And like they don't have like a reactive way to solve that in a way, so it's like, oh shit, we're behind.
And healer's low on mana, you're just smiting the boss and not really producing anything out of it. It's just a nightmare situation. And so that right side to me just seems so weird, because Shadowflame Prism is, I believe, converting into atonement on the first enemy it hits, kind of like how Divine Star works. So it's not doing AoE atonement healing in that vein, so it's not hitting 5 targets and healing for each individual target that's hit. But I don't know why they wouldn't actually take the opportunity to do this, because that's pretty much going to be the only way that Disc is going to produce meaningful atonement output if, you know, the numbers stay where they are. I know they're trying to buff Smite up quite a bit, and so they're making it worth like 2 Penance Bolts, but with a big Penance-focused build, you're shooting out like 7 of them at a time and trying to line it up with Schism. There's so many extra modifiers that Penance Bolts are taking. And so it seems like, once again, we're going to go down that path where Disc is still going to struggle to damage to heal in a 5-man environment, and then it's just going to cause them to spam Flash Heal or try this big heavy shield build to try to tend to the gap, almost. And so they did make defensive penance actually really good, but if you check like the Harsh Discipline talent, it really pushes you to produce more atonement events, which is using penance offensively, because it's firing 7 bolts, and that's 7 events per target. And so you're kind of in this feedback loop of, if you take Harsh Discipline and you want to play a penance setup, you're always using it offensively, and then it feels like you're going to miss out on a proc out of Harsh Discipline if you use it defensively.
Oh yeah, I think always like offensive versus defensive penance is still so weird to figure out, especially if you have talents that are buffing both of them. But I think Disc does like have a little bit more power, right? Like the idea of taking Aegis of Wrath and Rapture as like just an actual healing cooldown window in a 5-man specifically, like with incoming damage like really mattering, that's definitely like unique. Like that's big.
Oh yeah,
that is fat.
That'll be really good for Halls of Valor.
Yeah, that is insanely fat. So that's at least something that I think is a nice change with them, like kind of buffing Powered Shield overall, making Rapture more relevant. Because it's something where like you'd think, oh well, this is you know, going to be much better for my ramp and a thing. It's like, well, at least before when this was 30% extra and it decays by 3 a second, it's like, dude, you're putting these out if you're playing Rapture like to like basically give them atonement in a way. It's just like a little bit better absorb. Like, why would you ever take this? But in dungeons, it's so good.
Yeah, and so with that, you can actually mitigate quite a bit more that nobody else can do, and that's hopefully what Disc is able to bring about. But Rapture does require a lot of investment to actually be a good cooldown, because on its own, at least with how Powered Shield looks at the moment, it doesn't seem like it's that powerful of a cooldown. It seems like one of the weaker minute-and-a-half cooldowns out there for healers.
Dude, why are people saying Halls of Valor Sag? Guys, Halls of Valor bangs. It's so good. And they're obviously going to like nerf the damage from it, because back in Legion you could gear swap to like Pride as and defensive legendaries, and you just can't do that anymore. People's overreaction to dungeons coming back thinking it'd be bad, y'all are overreacting hard. Just wait till it comes out.
Yeah, I think if they get whoever was tuning lower Karazhan to get some work in before the expansion drops for Halls of Valor, if we get some beta plus soon, then it'll be totally fine.
One of the hidden extremely awesome benefits of them releasing a 2-person extra season that just made the game a little bit more playable for a while is the fact that they actually got their first run at realistically tuning up the old dungeons. They actually did it in the raids too. So do you know, were you doing Castle Nathria Mythic the first week?
Yeah.
Do you remember that weird shit when like we weren't doing it because like the things were bugged, And then Echo was like in the raid. We woke up one day and it was like the second day, and randomly all the abilities started working again, but only after they like made all the bosses resort to like 226 eye level, and like there was some weird scaling shit. And then like after the weird scaling shit was over, 5 minutes later, it appeared that the bosses had 10% more health, but they actually didn't. It was just like a scaling thing, similar to like when you're level 51 and someone's 59, but you're fighting the same boss and seeing like, yeah, that's what they did with the raid. They've never used this that's why everyone was so confused. They've never used this technology ever. So they were getting like their first run at it in this expansion, and they had a lot of opportunities to actually see what kind of things in old dungeons are overtuned and need to be looked at. So I have a lot of high hopes that the next dungeons they bring back will be fixed much quicker, and I think will be fixed before they even come out. Not to mention that we'll probably do it on beta for a while.
Oh, 100%. Everybody is gonna mob beta do that, so that'll feel way better. Yeah.
Yeah, they'll have so many people play beta when they let the 70 realm come out, and the which is next week I think, and then the actual Mythic Plus. But I don't know how long it'll take to do that. All right, hell yeah! Thanks for the talk, man. That was very insightful. Thank you.
Yeah, anytime.
Yep. All right,
Thanks for having me on.
Yep. All right, chat. That's enough pre stuff today. They can go fucking power word fuck themselves. I'm just kidding.
Thank you, champion. Now, we need to gather our wits and reinforce our position.
Oh my god, I left my oven on. It's fine.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 147 of the Titan Forge podcast, where Tunnels has left his oven on.
We cannot let the world
It's fine, though. Welcome back,
Ignore
Tunnels.
that.
How's your oven?
controls that
Well, it's off now.
Okay. We have a special guest this week, Mirez from Echo. Hello.
Hello, hello.
Hello. Great to have you back on. We had you on a year ago or something, which I think was a
some
pretty good
time ago.
episode.
It's already been that long. Oh my goodness.
Time flies.
It was after they lost, or after they won one of the MDIs. One of them.
Okay.
Yeah, it was one of them. I don't know. Maybe I was still playing at that point. Actually, no. That was probably the one where I don't know. It was a long time ago. Yeah, it was like
One of them.
one of them.
I think it was the first one you six-man. Because
Okay.
that makes sense, because we talked about,
Yeah, I think so.
like, you tanking time trials.
Oh
Right.
yes, it was actually the first one. Yeah, so it
Yeah.
was. Yeah.
6 months ago
yeah,
or something then, maybe.
Yeah.
Okay.
Online. Yeah, whatever. It was quite some time ago, I guess. At this point.
Okay, yeah, everything's kind of running together. Speaking of things coming up quickly as well, the beta and Dragonflight itself all seem to be in the pretty near future now. We're almost near the end of the year, and we have some beta keys that we'll be giving away this week, probably next week as well. So anybody who wants some of those in our podcast Discord, that giveaway is ongoing now, and it will be for the next day and a bit. So depending on when you hear this, maybe too late, but there'll be another one next week. So
Yeah,
join that
there's
Discord.
another one next week. Make sure you join the Discord. It should be, like, in the description of the YouTube video as well.
All right, so we'll talk, of course, with Mirez today about all the great push stuff. We have some breaking news, though, from, well, not breaking. We have some one-day-old news from the Dragonflight beta that we can talk about as well, which is the Season 1 rotation of dungeons. The final 2 dungeons that we didn't know about in the pool are going to be Halls of Valor and Shadow Moon Burial Grounds. The other ones we already knew about were Court of Stars and Temple of the Jade Serpent, and then we also know which 4 of the 8 Dragonflight ones are coming in. Anybody got any takes about Halls of Valor, Shadow Moon Burial Grounds?
I think Halls of Valor will be fine, assuming it gets enough work done on it. It's like a dungeon that's 10
Yeah.
out of 10 aesthetic. There's there are a couple of bosses and a lot of the trash that needs, like, a re-envision on how it should work, but I think it can be in a good spot. I don't know shit about that Shadow Moon Burial Grounds dungeon, though.
I mean, I can talk about Shadow Burial Grounds. It is a really good dungeon, or was in the past.
Okay.
So I think it does need work in terms of the interrupt department, because it has a lot of mobs that are randomly, like, standing still, channeling and stuff. So maybe some adjustments there, but I think in general it should be a cool dungeon. I'm less of a fan of the Court of Stars personally, because like we did play it too much already. I think at this point. So,
True, it's been in the game twice already.
I think they need to, with Court specifically, they need to change how the profession buffs work. Like, make sure that all of them are unlocked. That way you're not going to go in there with a comp and be able to not click the buffs again or something weird. Or there's one very optimal buff, the trap. The trap just happens to be there, and you not have the person to be able to click the trap, or you have to have somebody go blacksmithing.
I still think
mean,
that those items were okay considering what we had in Shadowlands, like being locked to only one option of having to click and earn, and the other side having to be Night Fae, for example. At least all the stuff in Court of Stars has 2 options, right?
Oh, thank God.
Yeah. I mean, or you do it like on on tournament run where everything was just set. There was no trap, there was nothing, and you just do it full raw the dungeon. I guess that also works.
Yeah, that was nice. I do think that both Halls and Shadow Moon Burial Grounds have the interrupt problem. Like, they have the same problem where we had so many silences and stuns, very long AoE stuns back then, and we don't have that capability anymore. And so like all those interrupts are going to be incredibly dangerous unless they nerf them pretty early on.
I think overall though, just like Blizzard has proved that they can modernize some of these dungeons, and sometimes it requires them to just remove mechanics.
True.
Which, you know, I think it should be fine, because even look at like Lower Kara. Lower Kara was, I mean, that's like a pretty recent dungeon. They've changed a lot about how Lower Kara works, and with Upper Kara, they completely changed how the sparks function. Like those do not function at all the same way that they did back in Legion. So I think that they've proven that they can change massive parts of the dungeon if they are given enough time.
Do you guys find it weird going back to like Docks and Depot that there's just no mobs that actually have like a interrupt cast thing
Yeah,
as
there's,
well?
like,
you
no
literally
interrupts.
never hit your interrupt button. Do you think they could like go in and, I don't know, add that to some of the abilities in these old dungeons as well, while like, you know, making some of the nasty abilities interruptible is a way to nerf them, I guess? Because I feel like you never pressed it in. I don't know about Temple of the Jade Serpent, but
That's a Jade Serpent special. Jade Serpent doesn't have any interrupts.
yeah, I don't
Really?
know.
But it also doesn't have any casts, so like...
But Shadow Moon does, Mirror says, so
Yeah,
Shadow Moon does.
Shadow Moon has a lot of stuff. I think they just need to rework it in general. I would assume.
The elementals in Shadow Moon Burial Grounds, from my memory, really cringe, because they keep summoning those bone soldiers. I just remember like the very beginning with the bone soldiers and the Ellies was like obnoxious.
Yeah, that is getting skipped 100%. I mean, the thing is also, I think in all of these dungeons, it all really depends what affix we get, yeah? If we get a cool affix that enables like some skips or some like removal of whatever, I don't know. It's just cool. Like you can also take like the current affix, it is kind of cool in terms of like it can put it on a mob and it's like, oh, that mob was kind of nasty in the past, but now it's an infiltrator, so whatever. But if you have like I don't know, a bad affix, let's say, for the casual player base, like 20% affix, I think. Maybe a little bit worse than dungeons, but we'll see.
What do you guys think about the length? Okay, because we've got Halls of Valor, 45-minute dungeon, right? Then we've got Ruby Life Pools, which if that thing is 30 minutes, that might still be too long of a dungeon timer for something that is Trash Boss
Jade
boss.
Serpent is also 20 minutes. They added more trash Ruby Life Pools, by the way.
Okay.
Oh, really?
In between second and third boss, but Jade Serpent is also if it's 30 minutes, that is a long 30-minute timer.
Yeah, but then you've got Halls of Valor in here at 45, right? Like that's the longest dungeon timer.
Well,
that they do.
That's also a long 45. I don't know if I mean if you
Right.
never wipe, if you don't wipe in that dungeon, you like two-chested, or you come in at like 38 minutes.
Yeah, that's kind of like Lower Kara, where you had like 5 extra minutes, basically.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like the farther apart the shortest and the longest dungeons are in the season, the more like tension that makes for at least when you're like trying to just do your weekly keys, right? You're just like, I'm gonna do the one that takes half as long, but I don't know.
Would you rather queue into Mist or in DOS? Yeah.
Right, exactly.
Definitely miss.
Let's make it a good point. I don't know. They have a lot of really short dungeons in the pool though. Quarter Stars is also 30-minute timer. Like, okay, so there's 4 30-minute dungeons in there. I don't know.
That's been one thing really nice about this season too, is that there's so many 30-minute timers this season. There's only like 2 long dungeons, and so doing keys in like a 4-hour session, you get like 2 more keys in a 4-hour session than you would the average season, I think.
Yep. And the affix is just W. I think that's one great thing about this current season, yeah?
True.
You just walk in, you just get stats, and you're like happy person.
Yeah, I saw a lot of like negative comments about the affix, especially when it was first being announced and stuff, but I've really liked Shrouded so far. I think, especially if they're doing new dungeons every season, I think you need to have an affix that's like as simple as Shrouded, kind of for forever, right? Like, could you imagine doing a really complicated affix and 8 new dungeons all in the same season every 6 months? So I hope this is the new standard going forward.
They should just bring back Tormented. It actually wasn't even that bad. It was just not good.
Doing the last boss's RP walking though. Miraz, you did some RP. Actually, did you guys do the RP walking? No, that was Liquid that did the RP walking, right? In the Zymox's charity cache. Yeah.
We did the first person on Stone Legion Generals. What was very interesting, let's put it that way. And then we also did first phase Saya Denafrus, the whole fight. Like, interesting things, yeah. No, but I mean, I can throw you a curveball and say infested. That was a great affix.
Oh, thank
really?
God. Oh, woohoo. They really should bring that one back, especially the one
Okay.
that interacts with normal affixes and they get bolstered and shit.
Okay, Infested doesn't bolster, doesn't drop Sanguine, doesn't heal from Sanguine. Okay? There's
What if
no
they move it-
critters like there was in Freehold that randomly get infested. Okay? No,
Or
none of
Tolda-
those
Tolda
the
Gor.
rats.
Yeah, a random rat in Freehold and Tolda Gor, they just decided to infest the next 5 packs, and you're like, wow, that's amazing. Yeah.
And you know, they can't travel through walls, they can't climb hills, they move at 25% of the speed that they used to, and they can't infest packs that they came out of.
Well, and you get 2% crit every time you kill one, or 2% haste. Now
No,
we're
it's a
talking,
great-
right?
I'm down now.
One
sounds
simple
pretty
tweak.
good.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're here now, yeah.
That was a lot of conditionals we just put on that one affix.
I mean, I must say, I've been playing like M+ and Dungeons in general since like bot now, like a lot. And Infested, I think I did like 10 weekly keys, and I decided it's fine. I don't need to play anymore this season, and then I didn't play anymore. So yeah.
That is a later me problem.
That was like the one affix that was never an MDI affix as well, right? There was just no MDIs that season or anything.
Actually, it was in one MDI, and it was as a like hidden affix next to Reaping, but we could ban all of the maps, and it was all got banned. And no one wanted to ever play this.
Oh my God, I forgot about that.
That's right.
They also did the BlizzCon showcase that patch as well, and they had
I remember like double sub rogue was the comp in that.
Yes.
Or was like the sub. Some people were playing sub rogue, and some people were playing unholy DK. Yeah, that's good
I mean,
times.
there was some wild stuff, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
we just need to hope for good affix. Like, the thing is, I personally hope for 20% affix because it makes MDI really cool and interesting.
True.
But I think for the overall player base, an affix like the current one, or like the, how's it called, the emissaries, like if you tune them a little bit differently, is kind of cool. And obviously the best affix ever designed with Awakened, where you just go in, you have the guys, and you can skip, your team is, like, everyone is on an equal path. It's just great, yeah. If they make
Yeah.
any of those affix kinds, I think then also all dungeons are kind of okay. Or gonna be okay, let's say.
I think everyone liked Encrypted as well along the Awakened lines because it just like anything that enables skips. I think the general population really likes.
Yeah, I mean that's probably. The thing is with the way like Encrypted was weird, right? Because you had like some grief on the team, and especially in the weeklies, you just sent the AoE, and then it was sometimes really hard. I don't know. It felt a little bit more RNG than Awakened, where you just right click and you could actually be like, oh, guys, don't DPS. It was a bit
True.
easier, I guess.
Good
Yeah, I don't know. The skips part of it was nice. It was a lot of fun, especially in like DOS, zooming all over that place. But I think a lot of groups like outside of that didn't really use it for too much. Like it was mostly just killer every pack, right?
well, that's half the movement speed that the Halls of Valor buff gives you after you kill the last boss, or the second to last boss.
The second to last boss.
Yeah, because you get it after Fenrir. Oh, I guess it'd be
Okay,
third boss.
third to last boss. Yeah,
Yeah,
Third boss, yeah.
yeah.
third to last boss. There's 5 bosses.
Any of the bosses.
Onto
When you clear the wings, yeah, put it that way.
Yeah.
All right. Cool. Let's talk a little bit about the regional weekend. Just great push stuff in general. We can talk about. We can also keep talking about affixes and stuff wherever anything is fine, of course. Side note as well. I already got to talk to Miraz and actually Gingy and Zalia as well on Echo Zone show they put on this last Monday. So if anybody wants to go check that out on like the Echo YouTube or stuff, there's a place for
good content.
further insight. Yeah. But always can talk about it for more. I don't know. I could talk about MDI or Great Push stuff kind of forever. And I know Miraz, you can too. So we're gonna take advantage of that. Tettles, you wanna fire a first question?
All right. How are you feeling back? Trell asked this right before the show started, and I told Miros to save it. How are you feeling now that you are back playing as opposed to being sixth man? Because again, last time we had you on, it was like right as you had swapped, and you talked about the differences that entailed. Are you happy to be back playing, or were you kind of enjoying the coach role?
I mean, it's hard to say because it's a little bit of a double-edged sword for sure, right? Like coaching has so many upsides that not having one is always a little bit, especially if you're trying to be this competitive, is a bit sad because I always look at it and be like, okay, I just played like 10 hours of Mage. I'm super depleted. I don't want to sit down and make weak errors or look at recordings and whatnot. So it's a bit sad to see what you could do, but on the other hand, I'm also really happy that I'm like playing again because I mean I do enjoy playing, and it is a completely different world from tanking raids, let's say, or like tanking only farm raids and like raid leading and whatnot, and then going back to DPSing dungeons. It is really fun. So I mean, if we would find, I'm pretty sure if we would find another candidate to join the team that is like really insane at the game, let's say like Clicks, there's a high chance, I guess, that I go back to the coaching role. But for now, I mean, finding someone like this is probably not the easiest, I would say. So I guess I will continue playing for now, or at least going into Dragonflight the first season, pretty sure. Maybe there's even an uproar, who knows? Because Robin is like now is a DPS now, right, for Echo, and I'm still tanking. So maybe, yeah, there might be a universe where I randomly start tanking MDI and he's DPS in MDI. Who knows? Then you at least have everyone on the main role. So far, we have been playing MDI, I think, 90% with off-roll people, yeah? Like, it's just like I'm a tank main, play DPS, and then Robin is like randomly not there, then I tank, and he comes in, and then we play DPS, like, oh my god, yeah. So, there's a lot of things going on, let's say.
So wait, who's your guys' main tank? Is it Roger main tank now?
Oh, I mean, there might be some changes coming soon that I cannot reveal yet.
Oh,
but,
okay.
Now, for now, it's me. Like for now, it's me and Roger basically. But there might be a change coming soon. Who knows? But
No
yeah,
leak,
that's the general plan right now.
Okay.
All right, how did you guys feel about the the like? I guess which one do we want to start with here? Key level, maybe?
Oh, no.
24, 25, 26 starting key level. So the first couple weekends, right? The regional weekends, we were starting those keys off at 24s. And then in the finals, it started off at 26. And you guys 3-chested every single dungeon at 26 on that. So did Ambition. Everybody else struggled with at least one of those. Was that something that was like fun to optimize? And how much work was it to like optimize those 3-chest 26 routes?
Oh, that is actually a funny story because we did have I mean, I don't know, either it was a plan from Blizzard side or it was I mean, I would like to have it differently, but basically how it was communicated was that on the day before the tournament at 10 p.m. We got told that the map started at 26. So we had to practice every day until 12. So obviously we had 2 hours left of our day, and then the next day was the tournament already. So it was kind of tight to get the info, let's say. And we were only practicing the highest keys, let's say, like we were playing a 32 upper Kara, like we tried it at least. It didn't work. But we played like a 33 streets, and we were like, okay, we basically played every key where we expected to be the highest level that is actually like possible in a tournament without like running against the wall for like a few hours. And then we got the info, oh, it's 26, and then we decided, okay, let's see how we're gonna basically not completely destroy our like super high key route, but make it a little bit more MDI style. So streets is a really good example where we're like, okay, obviously on the 33 streets, you put like 4 mobs and then you put like 6 mobs and then you chain 1 mob into 5 mobs or whatever. But we were like, okay, I guess on the 26, we just take the 4-pack and the 6-pack and Zulgamux and we all pull all together and we last, yeah. And yeah, that's somehow kind of how we got all the 26 strats. Obviously, we did change some things, especially like playing Zulgamux on the lower levels and then skipping him on the higher levels because he was just too hard. That was one of the major changes in almost every dungeon. And because of all those changes, we actually did run into an issue, what I mentioned on the other podcast as well already, was that in our 32 Gambit, our first run, I was confused about our routes. And because we had like 5 different routes, we had a 32 no Zulgamux Tyrannical, we had a 32 no Zulgamux Fortified, Zulgamux Tyrannical, we had like every combination possible basically. And I was just completely destroyed because we were obviously speeding through the keys and trying to get it fast done. And I was like, guys, we need to kill this infiltrator here. And then people are like, no, we don't need it. And I'm like, guys, I'm so sure I just pulled it. And then we played it, and then at the end we're like, okay, guys, we're a little bit over count, so we skipped like the 3 mobs in the last boss room. Yeah, not the pretty good count. Yeah, don't want to skip those.
Oh yeah.
Like, okay, I guess we have too much count, so we just randomly played 1 stars here with the boss, and we're like, I mean, it's working out somehow, but that was one of the backlashes, let's say, of making the counts.
But by the way, for those who don't remember this or didn't really watch TGP, he said that they only minorly modified their dungeons. These psychopaths played the Stormforged Guardians into the first boss of Gambit, by the way, and then he's claiming, Yeah, we just had minor route adjustments.
I mean, it was minor. It was
Really?
The four. I mean, the four guys into the boss was like, okay, I guess we just send it and probably we get plus. Hopefully, we get +2 or something or +3. We're like, I mean, it's probably gonna work out somehow, right? That was the mentality. It was a little bit spicy. No, not gonna lie. It was not the most favorable strat. Like we were like, either we make it or we don't, right? That was the idea. But obviously, I mean, okay, we did obviously change a lot of strats. Maybe I need to go a little bit back. Yeah, we did change a lot of strats, but it was easy adjustments. It was not big strat changes. Like a good example, Lower Car as well. We played the Ushers on 26 and 29 because we didn't have Invis pot because everything was too fast.
Yeah,
and
that's
then
a
on
good
a
point.
32, we just skip him because we have Invis pot back and we like it's easy basically. And those changes we just made on the fly, like thinking about it. But there was not going a lot of practice into it because we obviously only had 2 hours on the one day, and then like 4 hours before the tournament. So on that end, basically, Ambition was doing an insane job at making like they had a little bit more time obviously because we were NA, but they had really good time usage of their 26 routes, and they made really insane changes, and they did have a very good first day in terms of the 26s. We got a little bit lucky, let's say, because of the Iron Star on Iron Dogs. To go and dive into that real quick, it doesn't take too long. Basically, we had our Iron Dogs route, and we were like, okay, it's impossible to make a 26 +3. We did not believe. Okay, that was the mentality.
Oh no!
We were like, we cannot do what like we would need to do. What Ambition did was like a first boss pull, like a first room pull with like 26%. They just pulled everything in and wiped like twice, I think. So they got it on the third attempt. It was good to make it 26, but we were like, okay, we're not committing to this. We just play our own route. But because we have optimized our Iron Stars like so that they were so fast, we somehow managed to +3 the 26, what was kind of nice, I guess. And
crazy.
a lot of tech went into these Iron Stars. Yeah, we had like some bandage, combat drop tech, and I had some mirror image bug kind of thing. I guess it was not really a bug, but a little bit. So there was a lot of stuff going on, let's put it that way. And Clicks was standing there pressing Rain of Fire. I mean, he had a good race time as well, yeah. So.
Classic.
Don't worry, he's not even playing dwarf. That guy's on a troll, bat chesting, not even helping the rest of the team.
I mean, yeah, it was great.
Yeah. Now you said Clix is a good player. How do you know from somebody who plays Destruction Warlock for a whole weekend if they're a good player or not?
Well, Mirrors also had to play Destro in some dungeons.
Oh, true.
Yes. I mean, I did play Destro, and I can say I had the Rain of Fire. I started playing Destro. I had Rain of Fire on Shift 4 because it's my AoE keybind, yeah. I realized after 30 minutes that I was getting a hand cramp at this point, so I was like, okay, we're changing. And I told the team guys, Rain of Fire.
Not even playing dwarf. That guy's on a troll, bat chesting, not even.
Just skip him because we have Invis for back, and we like it's easy basically. And those changes we just made on the fly, like thinking about it. But there was not going a lot of practice into it because we obviously only had 2 hours on the one day, and then like 4 hours before the tournament. So on that end, basically, Ambition was doing an insane job at making like they had a little bit more time obviously because we were NA, but they had really good time usage of their 26 routes, and they made really insane changes, and they did have a very good first day in terms of the 26s. We got a little bit lucky, let's say, because of the Iron Star on Iron Dogs. To go and dive into that real quick, it doesn't take too long. Basically, we had our Iron Dogs route, and we were like, okay, it's impossible to make a 26 +3. We did not believe. Okay, that was the mentality.
Oh no!
We were like, we cannot do what like we would need to do. What Ambition did was like a first boss pull, like a first room pull with like 26%. They just pulled everything in and wiped like twice, I think. So they got it on the third attempt. It was good to make it 26, but we were like, okay, we're not committing to this. We just play our own route. But because we have optimized our Iron Stars like so that they were so fast, we somehow managed to +3 the 26, what was kind of nice, I guess. And
crazy.
a lot of tech went into these Iron Stars. Yeah, we had like some bandage, combat drop tech, and I had some mirror image bug kind of thing. I guess it was not really a bug, but a little bit. So there was a lot of stuff going on, let's put it that way. And Clicks was standing there pressing Rain of Fire. I mean, he had a good race time as well, yeah. So.
Classic.
Don't worry, he's not even playing dwarf. That guy's on a troll, bat chesting, not even helping the rest of the team.
I mean, yeah, it was great.
Yeah. Now you said Clix is a good player. How do you know from somebody who plays Destruction Warlock for a whole weekend if they're a good player or not?
Well, Mirrors also had to play Destro in some dungeons.
Oh, true.
Yes. I mean, I did play Destro, and I can say I had the Rain of Fire. I started playing Destro. I had Rain of Fire on Shift 4 because it's my AoE keybind. Yeah, I realized after 30 minutes that I was getting a hand cramp at this point, so I was like, okay, we're changing. And I
Pinky
told
Pro
the
is
team guys,
killing you.
I need 5 minutes. I make new keybinds. So I took my mouse as like an unlockable scroll wheel, right? So I unlocked my scroll wheel. I put it on F and on T and on the scroll wheel, and I just scroll wheel down the whole time and press my other buttons. What a beautiful experience! Let me tell you. Yeah. Like. So I mean, Clicks was having 4 keybinds, I think, for Rain of Fire because he was also playing it in the MDI. I think he pressed. We did actually check. Quick side note: we did check on the after the tournament because Clicks wanted to know, and he did press on in the whole tournament. I think he did press 38,000 times Rain of Fire.
Oh my
and
god.
I pressed like 55,000 Pyroblasts over like the whole weekend. It was great numbers. Yeah, I mean that happens. So
How many
you
death
need to
strikes?
do keybinds.
How many death
Oh,
strikes?
I mean, I only checked for Clicks and me because we're like, okay, we spammed a lot, I think. So, yeah, it was pretty fun. So yeah, no, but obviously to come on to Clicks, I mean, Clicks is a good player in terms of just playing the gaming. Yeah, he's just there. He's giving input when he's like, oh guys, this is shit. Yeah, it's like I need Night Fae, I need PI, I don't need anything, I need help or whatever. I mean, it's just the communication in the team, right? Like everyone. So.
All right, let's see. Why don't we talk a little bit about, so obviously we've been talking about the finals, but things actually went, I would say they went largely better in the finals than they did in the regional weekend, maybe, because the regional weekend, actually, it was kind of close, right? You guys ended up at the same total score as Monka at the end of that one, and they were ahead for much of the day, right? It was like a... You know, at the end of the day, you won on the dungeon timer, but they got to 193 points first, right? So,
yeah,
how did all that go? And of course, you were coming into this as the 3rd seed, an underdog by Tettles' definition.
They were the 3rd seed. They were the 3rd seed, bro.
Yeah. Were you at all worried during any of the EU weekend? I mean, obviously there were 6 really good teams here, right?
I mean, I definitely do think that the EU qualifier was like almost a global finals in terms of like team strength because the EU teams, like the top 4 EU teams, were like really strong in the first day already, and they were like, okay, that's crazy. Basically, we need to watch out. Let's say what is happening because we also didn't expect that it will be actually going into the direction that it went. That we will cap out the keys and we're gonna have a timer-based win or like maybe 1 key in the very end, like let's say the workshop 33, right? We were a little bit surprised in that regard. We also had a lot of missing information about a lot of things. Like let's say, like I can say that I was probably doing as mage on the regions. I was probably doing 5 to 10% less damage than I did on the Globus, just due to the fact that I was playing mage only in 2 dungeons. Like I mean, I did do good. Like damage was good in the time trial dungeons, obviously, because I did play mage all the time there. But I never really actually played actively mage in any of the other keys, apart from the little bit practice that we did, obviously. And it's a little bit hard to practice this kind of thing, yeah? Like the tournament is a bit different. So I learned a lot on that, improved a lot on the mage, also got a lot of help, let's say, from like just looking at AoE rotation and whatnot. So that was kind of nice. But in terms of the overall scaredness, of course, I mean, let's put it that way, yeah? We're never scared, like we would never talk about it. That's one team mentality. We're always like, we will win this, and that's a good team mentality to have because then you don't look at the other teams and be like, oh shit, guys, you know, watch out, and then you're like insecure about your own strat, and we're like, okay, like we know what we have is probably really good, if not the best, and otherwise we just steal some tech from other people. What we did as well, obviously, we did steal unlimited amounts from the NA Cup. I can say, yeah, like we saw so many things on the NA Cup. We're like, okay, that's cool, we take that. That's cool, we take that. That's cool. Okay, we make it better. How it always goes, right? So that's kind of nice. And the same thing we did obviously after the EU qualifiers. We were looking at the dungeons in a little bit of different mentality because we were also not like we did play high keys on retail, I guess, but I mean it's a little bit different. Yeah, we play high keys on retail in terms of we played in the best push week for 2 weeks, and that's it. We never play like shit affixes or like bad combinations or whatever because no one wants to play this. So we don't really run into issues, let's put it that way. And in the tournament, we ran into issues, let's say. So it was spicy, but I would say that the team mentality is always going to win. So we were not like scared in a way, but obviously we were like, oh shit, Monka is doing really good. We need to watch out for them, especially in the finals, let's say.
I'm sure it affected you a little bit, but do you think it was because it was so early in the season that it was hard to pick up Mage so quickly? Like, maybe you still wouldn't have had the experience on Mage, but I think there would have been a lot more solidified meta with it being known that like Lock Mage was probably the play, right? If it was later in the season.
Oh yeah, I mean for sure, right? I don't think I would have played Mage. Like I don't think I would have played Mage on retail. I guess maybe. Well, it depends, but like in terms of the meta, you're right. We were really unsure about the comp for days, if not weeks. We were like trying Rogue instead of Hunter. We were playing like Rogue Hunter instead of Mage. We were playing double Warlock. We were like testing a lot of things. Was not having the learning process of only actually ending up playing Mage, obviously. So that was obviously one thing that affected the overall learning curve. Some people were chilling, like Clicks and Mike were obviously always said they were like, okay guys, we're playing these classes, and then you have me, and I'm like, guys, I have no clue. what do I play? Yeah, I'm like, do I play Rogue? Do I play Mage now? Do I play another Warlock? Like, we're testing everything, right? What is good, get insight, but it was definitely hindering the progress a decent amount, let's say.
Did you ever consider Windwalker before the NA Cup? Probably not after you saw NA Cup, right?
No, I'm not even before. I mean, I did. One thing is, I'm a good Windwalker. I mean, I know Windwalker. I love Monk, so I'm like, guys, like when the dungeons, I'm like, guys, Windwalker is not gonna happen. Yeah. I'm like, okay, if we somehow manage, like, if somehow Destro Warlock gets nerfed again for some weird reason, and we need another AoE damager that does like bottom frag on the bosses, then we can get Windwalker in.
Yeah.
But the first thought that always came to mind is instead of playing Windwalker, you always play double Warlock. Because Destro and Demo, or like Demo in a sense, is basically a Windwalker that does a little bit less AoE, but almost double the single target.
Yeah, a ton more single target.
And one of the factors need to keep in mind is that all of these dungeons have weird melee mechanics. Or had, okay? Until stuff got fixed, removed, whatnot in the beginning of the season. Like, a melee hunt, like the Hunter, obviously meme with Mike that he's a floor POV a lot. But it is just a fact that if, like, Mike went into melee, had no cheat death, no night fade, no nothing. Everyone else was chilling in 40 yards range, was like lighting a cigarette up and was like, guys, we're chilling hard. And he's going into melee, getting one shot, frontless, and then if you need to play a melee like Windwalker who actually needs uptime to properly AoE out of cooldowns, you're like complete shambles. So we were like, we will never do that. We just play double Warlock if anything. So yeah.
That's very true. I think this season has been very melee unfriendly for the first time in a long time. Like the Shadowlands dungeons weren't too bad for melee.
I mean, it's a lot because of the kite meta in the past. Like from the old dungeons, from the old days, we just ran it out and the mobs didn't do anything. And now you actually tank them and everyone's surprised that like the chef give you like a slap with the ham or something and you just die as melee.
That was so funny. The ham fervent, just insta-kill your melee. Ah, yeah, it's really normal.
Like I can tell you guys, I forced, like I was pushing the kitchen to test the team, yeah, and Robin walked in and I got like a row of debuffs, yeah, like a roasted chicken, a ham debuff, a bite, a howl. I'm like, guys,
rolling pin,
all of this stuff, yeah. Like, and then he got stunned as well. I'm like, guys, I'm not going back here.
Kitchen is banned.
So how much did like challenge mode experience, if that helped at all, or like old Legion dungeon experience, did that end up mattering like a lot? Because you guys probably have the most experience out of any team with all of these old dungeons, because you were one of the top CM players. Like if you look up like, oh yeah, CM gold world record, Miraz is in some of these runs, like did that end up mattering?
I mean, for the challenge mode, for sure not, sadly. Like okay, I mean, I understood the dungeon, like I knew Iron Dogs and Grim Ray. But all the mobs got changed like a decent amount, let's say, and Blizzard did a lot of good fixes, let's say. But the main issue, or not the main issue, let's say the main aspect of all of the things is that with high keys, it's completely different mentality from challenge modes. In challenge mode, you walked in, we had double enhanced shaman and the blood DK and a monk, and we're like, okay, we pop AG, I press Fire Nova, and everything just explodes and nothing happens. But in high keys, you were actually like, I was going into dungeon, I was getting hit by a guy with the does the leg shot, the gunner or whatever. for like 5 minutes writing down on. I have beautiful screenshots where I have a big text document with all the spell IDs and the timers on spellcast success, and I was making all the vigorous for like obviously the team, all the cast for vigorous and whatnot, because all of those things are obviously really important for the for high keys, yeah, because you need to see if you're dying. Like on a high key, you see the leg shot does 80% on you, and if you don't see a cast on you, like it's just like you're a little bit self-griefing yourself. Let's say if it's like actually matters in a tournament. So yeah.
Completely unrelated. Do you guys hope that they like? I hope that they add the dungeons on like M0 difficulty and like scale them up to be not what they are right now, to where you can actually go in and test some of them beforehand.
Oh, I mean, I really hope that they actually properly test them plus, because I do think that they were hurting a lot from the not testing this season, in just terms of that the dungeons were just broken in a lot of ways. Iron Dogs, the wolf in the beginning was having the biggest pro. There's a great clip on my channel of Oshia, who starts, like he jumps back, starts swapping, and I roll to the right, and he kills me. And I'm like, okay. I mean, I guess it's a 900-degree cone behind him as well. Like, I don't know.
His hitbox is unbelievable.
So if they would have tested these dungeons, and hopefully they do it with the Dragonfly dungeons, like also the old, new, whatever you want to call them, Dragonfly dungeons, then they will get rid of like 90% of these bugs. And if they then do it how they did it this season, I think it will actually be a good experience. So that's one of the things. But yeah, I mean, one of the things, coming back to the challenge modes and whatnot, obviously it did help, especially in the Legion part. Like Legion helped a lot because you knew the general pathing of Lower Kara, what's going on and whatnot, right? But obviously most of the work was making the vigorous cast bars. Like I was inputting, like I was having like a 2 times 10-hour session of going M0 in the dungeons and just getting hit by every single mob with the auto-learning cooldown vigor on nameplate.
That thing is sick.
And I was just sitting there, having my microscope, like the magnifier on, and I'm like, nice, that spell, okay, typing it down, you know. And then I was because we have like a custom cast bar vigor for targeted abilities that is like can do a lot of things. Private, sadly though. Yeah.
Of course.
Proprietary.
That one can do like everything, and I will input like basically every single spell that every single mob does, so it doesn't do manually. That's always the work. So I input like 350 spells for these new dungeons.
That's so much work.
And then the team filters out what they need, basically, right? I mean, I filter out myself afterwards, but it's like, oh, I need to see this ability. Then you tick that you only want to see it if it's on you, or if it's on Robin, or if it's on anyone else. You know, like it.
Yeah.
It's a pretty insane project, basically, like this Vigora, but it is like unbelievably valuable, let's say, because a lot of things you actually learn. A good example is Iron Dogs, how's he called? The guy who throws a weapon at people. I have no clue how his name is.
Gatecrasher from the...
throw Gatecrasher?
Yeah, the gate...
Battlemaster.
Yes, the Gatecrasher. Yeah, and basically we found out only because of the target abilities we got that he actually targets someone in the last 0.4 seconds or 0.3 seconds of the cast. So your cast bar, you see the cast bar, and then it becomes green at the end, so you know you can pre-move and you only have one shot on a high key, yeah? Pretty nice. every single mob with the auto learning cooldown vigor on nameplate.
That thing
And I
is
was
sick.
just in, and I the Legion part. There's a great clip on my channel of Oshia who starts, like he jumps back, starts swapping, and I roll to the right, and he kills me. And I'm like, okay. I mean, I guess it's a 900-degree cone behind him as well. Like, I don't know.
His hitbox is unbelievable.
So if they would have tested these dungeons, and hopefully I do it with the Dragonfly dungeons, like also the old, new, whatever you want to call them, Dragonfly dungeons, then they will get rid of like 90% of these bugs. And if they then do it how they did it this season, I think it will actually be a good experience. So that's one of the things. But yeah, I mean, one of the things coming back to the challenge modes and whatnot, obviously it did help, especially in the Legion part. Like Legion helped a lot because you knew the general pathing of Lower Kara, what's going on and whatnot, right? But obviously most of the work was making the Vigorous cast bars. Like I was inputting, like I was having like a 2 times 10-hour session of going M0 in the dungeons and just getting hit by every single mob with the auto learning cooldown Vigor on nameplate.
That thing
And I
is
was
sick.
just in, and I was inputting, like I was having like a 2 times 10-hour session of going M0 in the dungeons and just getting hit by every single mob with the auto learning cooldown Vigor on nameplate.
That thing
And I
is
was
sick.
just in, and I was just sitting there having my microscope, like the magnifier on, and I'm like, ah, nice, that spell, okay, typing it down, you know, and
hero. A vault full of lost technology left behind by the last king of the gnomes.
other local sites
King
to my
Mechagon
business
is
advertisement.
inside.
The
If I
city
rescue
is a
him,
good place
I'll
to
be
start.
famous. I mean, we will be famous. Let's go.
I will store our luggage until we return.
What can I do for you?